We need healing. A day, a week, a moment to acknowledge the pain we've been dealing with, the hurt we've had to bear, losing loved ones, and because of isolation, not being able to be there, to say goodbye, to have a good cry, a good laugh, reflect on the good times, the memories, the history, the exchange of energy. Our homes have grown heavy, work unsteady. The uncertainty is hurting me when I feel I'm alone. We are not alone. We are all pieces of the whole. One big, beautiful soul whose love will hold us together, help us weather the storm. Our strength and our bond is what will help us carry on. Let's carry on with a day, a week, moments of healing, hands locked virtually, physically, spiritually. What a beautiful feeling.
Those of you who don't know Jay Ivy, he's an artist, songwriter. He has performed with Prince and Sia, Dougie Fresh, Erica Badu, Jill Scott, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, and the list goes on. I am so excited to be here today. My name is Kepra Kiers. I am the Director of Wellness and Therapeutic Services at Life Camp Inc., and welcome to the National Day of Healing. Today, we are here to acknowledge our pain, to provide wellness tips to heal, to bring communities and families together, to reflect on this time, but most importantly, to give us tools so that we can move through this cycle, to heal from the trauma of violence, and to give everyone who is listening an opportunity to understand how to transform in the midst of these challenging times. The one thing that we know for sure that we all have in common is pain. They say when you squeeze an orange, orange juice comes out because that's what's inside. And our country has been squeezed, and what has come out is pain and hurt and anger and rage, and it's been festering for years. And today we say it's time to heal. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Sit back and relax, get your water, get your tea. Find a comfortable space and prepare to receive some beautiful healing energy, some words, some inspiration, and information. Before we start, I also could not continue without acknowledging that today is Juneteenth. June 19th is Juneteenth, which represents the day that African American descendants of slavery were emancipated. And when we talk about the term of freedom, I would like to offer that our ancestors were released from bondage because anyone who is enslaved in their mind was free. And so we look forward to bringing insight to restore the freedom in our minds and hearts so we can continue to move forward powerfully. And in the spirit of Juneteenth and acknowledging our ancestors, I would like to introduce Onaje Muid, who's going to open up with a libation. Dr. Onaje Muid has been doing this work for 30 years. He is a Sufi social worker. He has been on the front lines of human services, human rights, and spirituality, especially for descendants of formerly enslaved Africans and indigenous people. So without further ado, light your incense or your sage, light your candle, and please join us in the libation and opening of the way with Dr. Onaje Muid.
Celebrate Juneteenth. We're here for the National Day of Healing for all the reasons and for all the people, for all the centuries that we've been here and been oppressed. Healing is something that we must affirm for ourselves. No one can heal us. We must heal ourselves. We must heal our people. We must heal our families. We must heal our communities. Some of you may not be familiar with libation. Libation is one of probably the oldest form of spiritual affirmation. And what I hope to do in these next couple of minutes is spend some time with you doing a libation for all of our ancestors who have been kidnapped, transported, enslaved, and terrorized. But I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start back in one of the most celebrated civilizations on this earth. And of course, I'm talking about Kemet. Some of you may know it as Egypt, but the true name is Kemet, land of the plants. And I'm starting with Kemet by showing you the Ankh, which is a symbol of life, representing the male and the female coming together to form life, because that's the only way life is going to come into existence. And it's because of our oppressors' desire to stop life, halt life, and give us so much conflict, we must constantly be in a state of healing. And I'm also going to have with me the feather. This is a condor and eagle feather. And as we know, Ma'at was the one with the feathers as well. So this is ancient and it's current at the same time, because we're here on Turtle Island. So I'm going to start by first acknowledging the 4 directions. As indigenous people here, we are that as well. And some of us don't know that. As indigenous people here on Turtle Island, we're going to honor the land and we're going to honor the 4 directions. And of course, we're sitting in a situation where we might not be facing exactly east when I start, but I want you to have it in your mind that we're celebrating the East, and we're asking all our ancestors who reside in the East to be with us today, I hope. To our ancestors in the South, we ask that you be with us today on this day of Juneteenth, I hope. And to our ancestors to the West, we ask that you be with us today on Juneteenth, I hope. And to our ancestors who reside in the North, we ask that you be with us today, I hope. And all of these ancestors and this energy from these directions have been here since the beginning of time. And now we're bringing these forces, these ancestors into our lives to help us go through the next stage of liberation. Juneteenth, as you know, is a celebration that people of African descent created as a result of hearing the news of the Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years later. So I'm talking 1865 to 1867, June 19th, in fact. So this is why we call this day Juneteenth. And of course, it's putting together June and 19 together to represent Juneteenth. And that's what we've been. We've been these creative geniuses to make a way out of no way and to feed when there was no food to be found, but we still wind up feeding each other. And we know this is true because we are here today. And if it wasn't for these life-giving interventions and creations, we wouldn't be here. So we want to celebrate that. And how do we do that? We celebrate that by pouring libation. So I'm taking the water and also acknowledging the 4 directions. And water is used as a way of saying 75% of the body is in water. If we didn't have water, how could we have life? Life begins with water. In the womb, in the mother's womb, there's water, there's liquid. So when we use water, we are just acknowledging the water element. But also we're acknowledging the earth element because we're going to pour the water into the plant, and we acknowledge the air element because we're using our breath. And we're acknowledging the fire element, which before I started, I used sage to clean this space energetically. So we really are celebrating the 4 elements as well. Sometimes we start the libation with the Creator. And some of you may say the universal spirit, whatever that is. And we're going to use the word Ashe. Ashe is a word that means let it be so. So I would like you to take a moment and be in this space of acknowledging that which you see as the highest form of creation, the Creator, him or herself. To be in that space and give acknowledgement and give gratitude and give recognition and give praise to the Creator of the universe. We say Ashe. To those Africans who were the first ones to appear on the planet and gave us culture, gave us language, gave us arts, gave us music, gave us science, gave us all the things that we see around us. Those very beginnings started with those Africans. In fact, it's been said that the Twa people in the southern part of Africa were the ones to appear first, and they gave us that which we know as civilization. To those first Africans that appeared on the planet, we say, Ashe. And to those Africans who created the pyramids, 18 dynasties in Kemet, even before Kemet in Nubia, those Africans who created music and civilization and gave us this sense of being together, gave us community. To those Africans, we say Ashe. To those Africans who created Songhai and Mali and Timbuktu, we like to acknowledge them and say Ashe. And to all those Africans who were on the continent, going through the period of colonialism and having to see their husbands and their daughters and their wives and their friends and their families being kidnapped and stolen away, and to their suffering, we acknowledge them and we want to remember them today as well. Ashe. To those Africans who were actually kidnapped and were in those dungeons all along the west coast of the continent of Akabulan, we want to acknowledge them, knowing that some of them died right there before they were even transported in those dungeons. And we know that they were raped. We know this. And we know that they were beaten as well. And to those Africans that died prior to leaving the continent to be transported, which is an international crime, we like to say Ashe and remember them as well. Ashe. To those Africans who were transported through the Middle Passage, many of them died as well. So many died, it's been said that it changed the trajectory in which the sharks would swim in the Atlantic Ocean, because they knew it would just be a matter of time before someone would be thrown off the ship and they would be fed with those African bodies who are now at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. To all those Africans who perished during the transport of the transatlantic enslavement period that was initiated by Europeans, we acknowledge them when we say Ashe. And we acknowledge the suffering of those who endured the voyage, which could take up to 30 days, a month. To those who endured the voyage and made it here, not knowing where they were going, but someplace deep inside of them, they knew they had to affirm life. And remember, those who voluntarily jumped off the ship said the unknown was too much of unknown, not willing to bear, and they decided to leave us. And many of our children are leaving us now for the same exact reason. So to those Africans that jumped overboard, and to those that came across, we say Ashe. Those Africans who were landed, not knowing where they were about to go or do, decided when they were put in these cane cages and couldn't speak the language of their oppressor, their captor. And when that whole was actually given to them, actually they gave them the food first, and when the person went to reach for the food, they pulled back the food, and then they gave them the implement, be it a rake or be it a hoe, and they brought it back again. And then they gave them the food again, and then they brought it back again. The person reached for it, and they put it back. Some of us died inside of those cages because they refused, because they knew what they were saying. They said, you want me to work for you and not feed me. The only way I can get food is because is when I decide to submit to what you want me to do. And many of them died right inside of those cages because they refused to. And that was our form of resistance. And some of our people are using the same form of resistance right now. With many of our captive brothers and sisters in the dungeons of these prisons on hunger strike because they refuse to capitulate. So to those Africans that died inside the cages and did not go forward with the captivity and the plan of the oppressors, we say Ashe. And we also remember those Africans that said, I will eat. Because if I eat, someday something is going to get better. Someday things are going to change. We are our ancestors' prayers manifested today. We are our ancestors' prayers manifested today because that which they suffered was for us to be here today, for our total liberation, not partial, our total liberation. And to those Africans who took the food and decided to work, we say Ashe. Justice and development. Recognition of who we are as a people. We claim ourselves as a nation, and we claim the right to self-determination. We claim the right of liberation. We claim the right of self-development. And justice. Justice is reparations, being repaired, compensation, restitution, and rehabilitation. We demand and we call for all our ancestors that we've named to be with us, to be with Garvey in the whirlwind, so that we can have a place that is peaceful and that is safe and that is developmental and nourishing in this decade. So we end the decade halfway through. So let us keep those three principles in mind: recognition, justice, and development. Our conversations, our meetings should include these three principles so that we can raise up that which we need to know, that which we need to share, and that which we need to do. And all those spirits yet unborn that are still part of the African family who will be coming to assist us in our further liberation, to those, all the unborns, we say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. This is Baba Onaje Nui, thanking you for that which you have come together to create this space of healing. Thanking you for the invitation to share this libation with you, to be with you on this day. And let us remember, 2.5 years, our people in Galveston, Texas didn't have information. Let us not be uneducated. Let us not be without the information we need. But information can only be useful if we are aware of it, if we accept it, and we apply it. Forward ever, backward never. Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, Dr. Onaje, for that incredible libation for us. My name is Mike De La Rocha. I'm the co-founder of Revolve Impact, and I'm so honored to be here with you. Before moving on, I just want to thank those that made this possible: Community Justice Action Fund, Life Camp, Not Another Child, Revolve Impact, Southern Vision Alliance, and 41 Agency. I also want to just center, this is happening during not only Juneteenth, but also during Gun Violence Awareness Month, which is a month every year where we can really center the life-saving work of community organizations across the country that are keeping us safe and well. And with that being said, I want to say thank you to the 25+ organizations who are supporting the National Day of Healing. It's amazing to be a part of an event that's really centering wellness, spirit, ancestors, and thank you for joining us. With that being said, it's my honor to introduce Homie to Homie, which is an incredible organization of indigenous Mexicano Chicano men predominantly from Southern California, who remind us and teach some of our cultural practices and traditions. It is these same traditions that we're going to be talking about and sharing today, things that have kept us safe, things that have kept our resilience up, things that will get us through this next birthing period that we are in now. So with no further ado, homie to homie.
In this moment of shifting, reconciling, and healing, it is important to remember that racial justice and indigenous sovereignty are linked to one another. We share this message from Tovangar, the original name of Los Angeles. We honor our Hashemen, Chumash, Tataviam, and Tonga relatives, the original stewards of this territory. We share this with the intention of creating a moment of reflection. As men who grew up in the barrios of East Los Angeles, we willingly and unwillingly created harm and violence in our communities. Our collective spirit absorbed these traumas. And as men, we now dedicate our work to bringing healing opportunities and these reconciliation efforts. And we offer this with that intention. Thank you.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful, and I was so moved. Let me get my microphone. You know, today is a day of healing, but today is also a day of realness, you know? We are live, we are in the moment, and we want to also give people the opportunity to just be, to let go of the trappings of perfection, to let go of the need to show up a certain way. Even our healers are in need of healing. Our leaders are in need of leadership. We are all in this space together. And I just wanted to acknowledge again the brother Onaje Muid, because he said that we are our ancestors' prayers manifested today. The work and the effort and the sweat and the fight and the resistance and the healing, what our ancestors put in, we are now those prayers in real time. And so it is our duty to continue to move forward. It is our duty to shine. And so, in that spirit, we think about the fact that we were born with the energy of love and a sound mind. And love is freedom. We were born free. We were all born with that inalienable right to love and to be and to express. And so, as I bring up our next segment, I had the pleasure of speaking to a world-renowned healer, a sister who is really about the liberation of the womb, who is a doula and a celebrated author. And we talked about the fact that in the Black and brown community, women are 5 times more likely to die giving birth or within the year after giving birth, and the trauma that is repeated in the process of childbirth for Black and brown women. And so without further ado, I'd like to just share with you the conversation that we had just a little while ago. Please join me in sitting back for this amazing and very important conversation. It really needs to be brought to the forefront of our movement as we talk about reparations, as we talk about justice. Without our children, without our mothers being able to bring our children into this world in a healthy space, then how can we talk about Black Lives Mattering if Black lives are not being born? And so please join me in checking out this clip between myself and Latham Thomas. Thank you. So on this day of healing, I am so excited to introduce world-renowned wellness leader, master birth doula, and founder of Mama Glow, Latham Thomas. She is named one of Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul 100. She's a best-selling author and the go-to guru for modern holistic lifestyles for women. So everyone around the world, please welcome Latham Thomas. Peace, Queen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being present. Your presence is definitely a gift. I'm really excited to connect with you in person. I enjoyed your meditation on Queen Afua's Black Girls Rock Sacred Sunday platform. And what we have in common is that I studied with Queen Afua for many years, and I'm a Sacred Woman wellness practitioner. So when I saw you opening up and I felt your energy, you know, I loved your backdrop and your vibe, and I saw that you were on Queen's platform. I said, oh, she's family. So I feel that kindred spirit with you. Can you hear me, Latham?
I can hear you. I can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I was
You dropped out.
praises.
You dropped out for a second.
Okay. Well, I was singing your praises and speaking to our mutual relationship with Queen Afua, which is where,
Queen.
yes, where I felt a kindred connection to you.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And you know, speaking of Queen Afua, I know that for her, she's all about womb wellness. So when I learned that I would be talking to you, I was really excited, especially during Juneteenth. You know, this sense of emancipation, and as I was just watching your interviews and listening to you speak, I loved how you were talking about birth as a rites of passage, and that being the first rites of passage. And that is so true. Just coming through the canal, you know, how we enter the world. And so I was really moved when you said, when you gave birth to your son, you saw your ancestors and you looked up and you had an out-of-body experience and they were there. And I said, yeah, you know, everyone should experience that. And I really acknowledge you for holding space to keep women safe and to help them to have safe childbirth. So I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things, but given the time that we're in, given the time that there's finally a real presence to the systemic racism, and you are a champion for women as a master doula, I wanted to talk about how you felt systemic racism really impacts the birthing process and that experience for Black women.
Wow. I mean, it's almost like, where do I start? Because every aspect of the experience is affected by systemic racism. And I think one of the things that we have to consider is that these effects are operating on us before we're even born. You know, before we arrive here, racism is acting on us. And so what this looks like for people, if we can think about the past, and we could think about what it was like for our ancestors who arrived here, coming through the Middle Passage, many of whom were pregnant because they were raped on their way here when they got onto those boats. And then they arrived here on these shores to not only deliver babies in the bowels of the boats, but also when they arrived here, they would take care of not only enslaved women, but the slave masters' babies. They would look after the entire family if there was no doctor present. And they were only seen as valuable because of their bodies during chattel slavery. They wet nursed for the survival of white babies. And so when we talk about this and we talk about how, you know, the work that we did in that time and our ancestors did during that time was so critically important, but also it was undermined. And so once, you know, the sexual system came into practice, it wasn't a respected form of medicine, it was new. And so they had to learn a lot from our Black granny midwives. They had to learn a lot of this African ancestral technology, right, that was brought into the medical system and then taken away and severed from its connection to the people. Those people were then pushed out, right? Pushed out of the system. There were obviously systemic barriers put into place to then create barriers that would not be possible for someone like you or me to go into the hospital to deliver a baby until insurance covered us being able to go. So once insurance came into play, then we were attractive customers to these white male doctors who then had pushed out and destroyed essentially a system that we had in place that was working for so long. And so when we look at that through line of really that's where it started, right? And so we can actually trace all of these adverse birth outcomes and the disparities back to that period. This is hundreds of years ago. We're talking like 300 years, right? The same type of language that is written about our bodies in medical journals from the 1700s, right, is believed by medical students today, right? And so if somebody doesn't believe our pain or perceive us as valid when we come in, if they don't look at us and understand that we have unique needs and address those needs, if we don't have consistent care, if we don't have adequate insurance, if we don't have, you know, a provider who is listening to our clinical needs, if we don't have somebody who perceives that we actually feel pain, right, then we are often misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed. We often don't get the care we need, right?
Yes. And the fact that you're talking about hundreds of years ago, and yet today, Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth or within that first year, you know, like you said, that postpartum cycle. And that's insane. When there were so many things that you touched on that I really felt really needed to be amplified. And so when you talk about that cycle of birth and that rites of passage, the reason I want to stay there is because think about the impression, the beautiful experience that you had at a birthing center, right? Where you got to experience your ancestors and really receive a blessing, because when we give birth, we are bringing the ancestors through with us, right? So now giving birth, there's yelling, there's screaming, there's fear, you know, like you talk about a lot of pain. The purpose of a doula is to create that smooth passage, that vibrational energy impressed upon the DNA and the genetics of that child coming through. So now they already come through with that energy of fear, you know, with that energy of rage and pain. And then someone's on the other end either pulling out by force, right? And someone that they don't know. And a lot of women aren't given the opportunity to maintain their umbilical cord or have a loved one there. And so all of that plays into that post-traumatic slave syndrome, like Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about. So I wanted you to talk about your women's center and how that creates a space where it seems like you're breaking the cycle of trauma through childbirth by creating a new rites of passage in that way. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I feel so thankful for is that, so yeah, my experience was one where nobody spoke about that was possible. Like, I didn't hear that it was possible to have my ancestors show up, or that it would be beautiful, or that it would not be, fraught with pain. And I walked home after my son was born and was like, nobody said it could be this.
Wait. And that's crazy. You said you gave birth and that day you walked out with your baby.
Yeah, 6 hours later. 6 hours later. Because again, in this environment that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're well, and that you're better served at home, right? With your people, your environment, and with your birth village, right? And so I think what we've come to do at Mama Glow is really think about how do we protect the birth village, but also how do we help to shape the future of the next generation of birth workers. Who are those people? And like you said, there is trauma. So many people come because their own experiences of trauma in birth, or their own experience having been born into trauma, right? Or they've had adverse medical experiences, or they had an amazing birth. Whatever it is, many people come, and the work that we're doing is unbinding some of this trauma, and much of it is not even our own. Like, we're carrying our mother, our grandmother, our great-grandmother.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's part of the work too, I think, is just to address the fact that we have to let go, and we have to really look at what's available to us in terms of tools to process healing, and to be in a constant engagement in our healing process. And so our doula training is so much about educating the next generation of birth workers, but it's also about helping people come into right relationship with their bodies, and to learn how to see their body as a sacred site, reclaim their body, and to also move in a way where they can support someone in their most powerful and most vulnerable moments. But you have to do that work yourself, right?
Yes.
And this is work that our people have been deeply involved in for so long. And what has happened is that the work has been co-opted, repackaged, sold, like taken away. There's been sort of this resurgence of doulas, and you see more visibility. But we have always been doing this work. And I think that now it's really important for people to understand that it is cost prohibitive for midwives to gain their midwifery licenses through education practice, and then to be able to practice in the world. There's legislation against them practicing. We have actively built against midwifery in this country. We have built against doulas.
Why would there be legislation against a doula who literally, if you think about it, they're actually taking some of the burden off of the healthcare system, because they're mitigating a lot of the trauma? Like, when I gave birth to my daughter, I had preeclampsia, and I didn't think that I'd have an emergency cesarean. And I remember you were talking about Beyonce and Serena Williams and women who have insurance and have access to all types of resources, and are still experiencing these issues where if I had a doula, when I gave birth 32 years ago, I would have been able to probably mitigate that, just with my nutritional lifestyle, with yoga and meditation. And I was really intrigued when you talked about preparing these doulas to prepare the women for childbirth. Do you also take them through any healing of past memories or healing of traumas while they're pregnant?
Yeah, we do, in the doula work, we do so much around healing. And it is about, like, I see where someone is. Definitely in the class, it is about us working together with each other and seeing what comes up to the surface, and everybody being a source of medicine for everyone else. But in the work with the clients, absolutely, because as you know, depending on if that's your first experience, if that's a subsequent experience, there are entry points where there's just been trauma, where there's been adverse experiences, and those things come up to the surface, and they well up, and they open at times that are not convenient, right? And so we have to do this work to prepare ourselves and protect, right? And so absolutely, I think it's so important. But what I would say, to answer your question about, well, why would there be legislation against doulas or midwives? because the work is like birth is wild, right? And the idea of moving into a space, a medicalized space, is like being in captivity, right? And so when you're birthing in a space, you are not in your natural element, you are not as comfortable, where you are constricted. There is control over your body, and the sort of mandates of medicine and the mandate of these systems that are patriarchal and that are also steeped in white supremacy is to control, right? And so you are not free in your body when you are in these spaces.
I
Right.
was just thinking that when you were talking, when you just talked about really even the medical institution really being designed to accommodate the white male, right? And the patriarchy and not having control over your body, it's almost like in the spirit of emancipation, you're actually giving birth in an enslaved, controlled environment and repeating that cycle, of slavery, and keeping that energy alive of trauma so that it's impressed upon the child, and yet we are, it is said in the word, we are born with the energy of love and a sound mind. And you talked about giving birth with the energy of love impressed upon the child, and how important that is. And we look at the rage and the anger, and like you said, the generational trauma, that's now impressed in our cells, in our cellular memories. So forgive me, like jumping in like double dutch, but you just like dropping the bombs. And I really feel what you're saying, because I see it in the community that I work in.
Yes.
We work with women who are living in food deserts, who don't have knowledge of self, who don't have partners or even support systems to help them, who don't know about proper nutrition, and all of those things beget this continuous cycle. So, I think that we need to add another legislation to our books as we are marching and protesting and talking about, systemic change. I definitely think that women's birth and making sure that doulas have an easier passage to get their certification. I think that's something we need to add to the list of what we are seeking in this time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of that. And I think that, when we think about, the importance of Black women and our birth experience, if we are the only ones, right? So you talked about the statistics. So the CDC released research just in 2019, right? That said that we're now 4 to 5 times more likely than white women to die during childbirth, due to childbirth-related causes. So what that means is we're in a state of emergency, and we're actually kind of like an endangered species. When we know about endangered species, that they are protected, right? But Black bodies are not in this country. And so if this was an issue where we saw white women were dying at this rate, they would have eradicated this, right? If this was men, we would have eradicated it. And so what we know is that the only people that will solve this are ourselves. We cannot wait for legislation. We cannot, and we should not wait, because I think that there is all this kind of like, this chatter about, well, it takes time. Like, no, it does not. Like, overnight, people figure out solutions for things that they care about. And we need to be at the top of this agenda as a human rights issue. That Black women are dying at this rate is a human rights issue. It is not a Black issue. It is not a woman's issue. It is a human rights issue, because everybody is born through the pelvis of another woman, right? And so we need to preserve this experience for our community, because what we also understand is that we are deeply matrilineal. We are communities that are governed and held together by the glue of our ancestry that is connected through the fiber of women. And so when you have your grandmother and your great grandmother and your aunties and all these people who are part of what makes your community like that quilt, right? When one of those people passes away, it actually starts to destroy the integrity of the community, right? So imagine a woman gives birth and does not even survive to meet her baby. A woman gives birth and is not able to go back into her family and her community. It is a loss. So we're not just talking about, like life in terms of statistics. We're talking about actual people and their lives and their full lives that were left behind, that were cut short. These are people, some of which will never, like, I mean, entire generational lines cut, because if they had a child, they can't even have any more because they died in childbirth. So you have a whole line of lineage that was cut short, that was supposed to maybe continue on. You have people whose ancestors made it through all that we made it through. Our ancestors made it. And for those people to be in a place where they are upwardly mobile, they have access, they have tools, whatever it is, okay, they have education, they have postdoctorates, and they still have a chance they have a greater chance of dying in childbirth with all the education and all the money versus, right? And then if you have a little teeny bit of education and a little teeny bit of money, that'll shoot up your rates of success of birth outcomes if you're white, and it will not affect it for Black women, which means factor here.
Yeah, no, I hear that, Queen. I think we have a little bit of a break in the connection, so I missed the last part that you said, but it sounded like you were just kind of just speaking to the culmination of what happens because our women are at greater risk. So tell me this, because you're right, we can't wait for legislation. Women are dying now, although legislation should be passed. But what can women do now? You know, a woman who is pregnant now, what can she do? Does she reach out to you? Is there a resource of, you know, of good doulas, of Black doulas, of, you know, of women of color doulas? Like, is there a network? What does she do right now with little insurance, with potentially very little resources? You know, what's the bridge to that resource for her?
Yes, she does all of that, right? So reaching out to community-based doula groups where you can get low cost or free doula service. You know, doulas are like, our sort of code of ethics is to serve at every level. And so if I can't serve, I have to connect you with somebody who can serve, right? That's how we do things. So if you should not feel ashamed if you cannot afford the service. It's supposed to be a sliding scale and based on income, or also based on like your ability, right? And if you do not have any income, how are you going to pay someone, right? So we have to figure out that. Number two, some insurance providers, depending on your state, are actually doing reimbursement through Medicaid. So you might be able to, depending on where you live, get reimbursement, getting a doula through the state. Number three, you should definitely look to the organizations to see who is led by people of color, and then ask them what their percentage of doulas of color look like that work with them, who is Spanish speaking, who works with immigrant communities, who's, you know, how many Black people you have, how many senior, you know, people do you have, you know, in terms of their skill sets, you know, what age ranges of people do you have, so that you can get a sense of the type of people that you could interact with and who might be able to service your needs. And then I would say, you know, interview people, ask questions, get information, go to online. There's so many webinars, classes, online courses, free resources that you can take part in. We have some great webinars on Mama Glow that kind of help people navigate this time, especially with COVID, where they can sort of figure out how to navigate this period. And these are free webinars, right? But I would say, you know, like you said, you want to do the research, start asking questions, go to online events. And when the world opens back up, go outside, like go to some of these classes and spaces and see. One of the things I really feel so powerful, or could be so powerful for us, is if we believe that we could belong in these spaces that everybody else feels like they are entitled to. Because we deserve to be in these birth centers. We deserve to go to the mommy group. So we need to also go into these spaces where the information is being shared that would ordinarily be a space that we might be locked out of. Or we need to create these spaces, invite people into these spaces. And so there are lots of folks on Instagram, midwives, doulas, you know, people in the community that are doing community-based work that you can reach out to as well. And I would say another thing that a lot of doulas are doing right now is virtual service, virtual support. So they could, so you could do just like how me and Kep are on the thing right here. We could be like this in a conversation, and you could be asking questions. I could be teaching you. But the main thing I want everybody to leave with is that we want to be able to advocate for ourselves, right? Whether we have a provider, a doula with us or not, whether it's us and our partner, or if we're alone, we want to learn how to advocate. And so there's some real important pieces of information around advocacy that I want everybody to remember, is that consent, informed consent, is what we want to be making sure that we're clear on, that there is no procedure that starts to take place before we have consented to it, which means that we have to completely understand the
while
nature.
we're coherent and not under anesthesia.
Exactly, because that's not consent.
I was about to have an emergency cesarean. It was after they gave me something to slow down the contractions because I wasn't dilating fast enough. And then as I'm groggy, they passed me a piece of paper saying, oh, we're going to have to give you an emergency cesarean. So all I remember was womp, 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 womp. And thankfully, my family was there with me to look at everything. But that's exactly right. Like everything you're saying, I'm so happy you're sharing that and teaching women that they have the right to talk about the process, their preferences,
Absolutely.
and their experience, and to go into those spaces. And I love the principle of being a doula is if that person doesn't work or, you know, isn't able to retain your services, your duty as a doula is to connect that person to the next person.
Yes.
So it's not like, you know, they feel like the door is closed. I want everybody to hear that. Like, do not be afraid. Take the first step, walk into those spaces and go online. And your website is mamaglow.com?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's M-A-M-A, right?
Yeah, MAMAGLOW.com. We have doulas everywhere. We have them in Madagascar. We have them in Paris. We have them in every continent except for Antarctica. But we have every continent.
What you got against Antarctica?
Right? We have every city, so you can find somebody, and you do not have to do this alone. Please don't feel like you have to. Even if you're at the end of your pregnancy and you feel like, you know, I didn't do my due diligence, or I didn't do the outreach, or I was too shy, or I didn't feel the confidence, do it now and know that you have the permission, because people are waiting for you. There are literally people here who are waiting to service you.
Beautiful. We have 2 minutes. There's 2 things I want to share. One is you also wrote 2 best-selling books. One is called Mama Glow, right? And that's and that would be for expecting mothers, to teach them, to give them tools and tips through the birthing process. And then the other is Own Your Glow. And those are just like wellness tools and tips to kind of help you self-navigate and provide tools for self-care. I love that you talked about play in that book. I love that you talk about play. Being childlike and rekindling play is so therapeutic. And so I thought that was just beautiful. So I got to catch a copy. I actually went online on Amazon. They were sold out. Congratulations.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. So I definitely have to catch the re-up, but it was so great to speak to you and to connect with you and to receive this valuable information, especially in the spirit of Juneteenth and emancipation. The way that you spoke and what you represent, you know, the birth of a child is likened to the birth of this movement. You know, when you talk about how pain informs the body, and the United States right now being the collective body and going through it in order to get to the other side.
Yes.
So I salute you. Yes. I am so grateful. We must connect when all of this is over.
I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait for that. Yes. And I just want to say one thing to add to what you said about play, is that this moment, in all of its challenges and all that it's taking us through emotionally, is also about joy. They want us to not be in our joy. This system is designed to steal and siphon every aspect of our joy. And what I know about our people is that we in the midst of all of it create beauty, and we stay in our joy. And so I just want all of us to remember that, you know, we are supposed to be dancing today. We are supposed to be out here fully expressed versions of ourselves and living into our joy. So that is your birthright. And that's what we need to get back to really make sure that we start protecting the space of joy.
Yes, and our glow, because when we are joyous, we glow.
Yes.
Thank you so much, beautiful. Blessings to you, abundant success, continued joy with your teenager as you shelter in place with the teen.
Thank
And
you.
congrats on his music, and I wish him much success. And I love that you said you knew he was going to be into music because he kicked to the rhythms in your
Yeah.
belly. And that is probably the best way to close this segment, and letting people know that when you're in tune, you can truly birth the nation. And you have the right and the opportunity to be protected by the ancestors. So, in the spirit of Juneteenth, everybody go to mamaglow.com, stalk Amazon so we can get these books back in stock, so we can order them. Mama Glow and Own Your Glow. And thank you so much, Queen. Everyone say thank you to
Thank
Lathan Common.
you. Thank
Yes,
you.
blessings and continued success.
Blessings to you too, Queen.
Peace.
Thank you so much, Latham. Latham Thomas is literally one of our world's greatest teachers, healers, someone that embodies all that we're talking about, somebody that continues to remind us the importance of centering childbirth and children in everything that we do. I am very excited now to introduce one of my favorite MCs. Akishian is an artist that has performed all over the world, from Japan to Los Angeles. On top of being an incredible artist, she's a digital strategist, she's a storyteller, she's a writer. She has an album coming out that is literally going to catapult her. But I would be remiss if I didn't really try to reach into the camera and just talk about how incredibly big Akishian's heart is. Akishian is an incredible human being, an incredible artist whose artistry, whose love, whose passion, whose activism comes out in everything she does, from social media to music to just anything that she puts her hands on. So please welcome the one, the only Akishian.
Today, I choose to consciously breathe. Today, I take a moment to inhale with intention. See, I've been holding my breath for a long time. Fear has had me in a chokehold, a headlock, pressure upon my chest, showing up expectedly, unexpectedly. I've been a hostage in my own skin, weighed down by my own crown. Fight or flight, don't talk too loud. Fight or flight, don't wear your hair out too big. Fight or flight, don't have a son built with the stature and made in the image of God. Fight, fight, fight is what I'm telling my adrenaline gland that's been triggered too many times, causing my airway to dilate in order to provide the muscles with oxygen that it needs to fight the danger that I face or flee from it. So you telling me that's the only time I choose to actively breathe? Well, today I will consciously breathe. No, every day I will breathe with intention, because it is by design that the system is set up to slowly take our breath away. I will take the biggest inhale and blow out against every lie that has ever been spoken against us. The biggest inhale for every chain that has been placed upon us. The biggest inhale for the man that was just lynched today. Because your last breath was the baton for my next. When the system fails us, we must create our own. Today, we heal.
Ooh, wow, that was amazing. Like I felt that in my spirit. The most beautiful thing about poetry, song, dance, music, it is vibrational. And our people from all walks of life, particularly people of color, have often used music and spoken word and art as a healing modality. You know, the other thing that we have used and held on to, particularly our ancestors as we talk about Juneteenth, is religion. And religion has been a pathway for many people as a gateway to healing, to get through difficult times. But oftentimes, your belief system and what you believe can cause you to be at odds with others, you know? And I think about the different religions and walks of life, and they all share the same pathway, which is to know God, you know? And so if I were to just break down really quickly, the one thing that we all have in common, no matter what your walk of life and no matter what your faith, right? The one thing that we all have in common is anyone who is living is breathing, right? So no matter where you are in the world, on the other side of the continent, anyone who is living is breathing, which means that the breath is everywhere at the same time, which would be omnipresent. And without the breath, there is no life. No matter who you are, your heart can stop and you can get a defibrillator. But if you stop breathing, you will die, which means that the breath is omnipotent or having all power. And when I think about the fact that when we're under stress and we experience anxiety and pain and frustration, we're often told, breathe, take a breath, which means the breath taps us into the ability to think or tap into our internal wisdom. So the breath is also connected to omniscience. And so the only other time I've heard the terms omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient used was in reference to God. And so technically then, we all have the breath of God, the breath of the one source of life in us. And it is important that no matter what our faith and what we practice, we all know that we are interconnected. So I am so excited about this next segment because we have two people, two powerful leaders from two completely different faiths. We have Reverend Michael Waters, who is the founder and senior pastor of Joy Tabernacles AME Church in Dallas, which is one of the newest and fastest growing AME churches in the state of Texas. We also have Omar Suleiman, an American Muslim scholar, civil rights leader, writer, and public speaker. And he's the founder of and the president of Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research. And he's an adjunct professor at the Islamic Studies. He's an adjunct professor. Hey, listen, you try saying this fast. He's an adjunct professor of Islamic Studies at Southern Methodist University. I did tell y'all, healing is also about dealing in real time. Healing is also about being okay with being real, expressing, and keeping it moving. Love brings flow, and so we're just going to continue to flow. And so I'm excited about this, though, because we have a Christian pastor, we have a Muslim pastor, and they're going to come together to have a conversation. And I really want you to listen to the common truths that they both believe in that have brought them together to sit down next to each other and build. And as we come together on Juneteenth, as we come together with people of color from all walks of life, let us also be mindful of our beliefs. Let us also be mindful of the differences that we put up in the name of our faith. And ask ourselves, is that really of our Creator? So tune in for this conversation, and let's talk about it afterwards.
My name is Michael Waters.
I'm Omar Suleiman.
We are faith leaders, professors, authors, activists, and social commentators.
We're also fathers and the husbands of women we believe to be the greatest in the world.
It is our desire to make the world a better place for our families and for our neighbors who are near and who are across the globe. This drives and motivates our efforts.
We met 5 years ago today amid a crucible of pain. 2 days prior, a white supremacist domestic terrorist entered Mother Emanuel AME Church and murdered 9 people in cold blood. We stood together that Juneteenth of 2015 for a memorial beneath the statue of Dr. King.
The community gathered to pay their respects. Unfortunately, Homeland Security was also present as threats had been made against our gathering. Tragic.
Over the past 5 years, we have been drawn together to stand together for far too many tragedies. We have stood side by side as armed terrorists threaten mosques by parading outside with assault rifles. We have stood side by side as countless unarmed Black men, women, and children have been slaughtered by the police.
We have stood side by side in airports to stand against Muslim bans, and we have marched side by side to speak against children in cages. We have even run from bullets together unleashed by an active shooter who took several lives.
These recent years have been difficult years. We've lost far too many. And this was before COVID-19 swept upon our globe, bringing with it immeasurable pain and suffering, overrepresenting its harm among people of color.
And yet we still stand, for we still believe in the hope of a better day. For time and time again, no matter what tragedy has befallen us, we have borne witness to the strength and power of community.
As our world has been radically shaken by COVID-19, and our souls shaken by the public executions of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many more, it's time for us to radically reimagine our societies for the better.
Not just to speak of reform, but of reconstruction. Not just to limit the access of racialized policing in communities ravaged by racialized poverty, but to invest in those communities that have never been given their due reparations.
That takes courage, sincerity, wisdom, and people of all faiths and backgrounds to come together and uplift those most vulnerable, no matter what their faith and background.
As Malcolm X said, we must be for truth, no matter who is for or against it, and justice, no matter who is for or against.
And Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
So let us now pray. Eternal God, we confess,
that as casualties mount and economies struggle,
as schools close and nations quarantine,
as hospitals fill and anxieties rise,
that it is difficult for us to find hope.
still, God, amid it all, these are not hopeless times.
For hope is found in healthcare workers who continue to show up to care for their neighbors,
In teachers who still love and reach students in virtual spaces,
in grocery store workers who keep shelves stocked and stores clean,
yes, hope is found in younger neighbors checking in on older neighbors,
and churches, mosques, and synagogues who still make sure their neighbors are fed.
hope is found in our capacity to continue to show our love for you,
To continue to show our love for ourselves and our love for our neighbors, even if at a safe distance.
though it sometimes feels like the earth is spinning off its axis.
Hope is found in knowing that the earth still spins in the circumference of your hands,
And that each day the sun still rises again.
and so shall we rise again. Amen.
And Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Waters and Omar Suleiman, for those words of wisdom. In a time of fear, in a time of pandemics, in a time of police violence, it's imperative that we look at our teachers, our cultures, our traditions as a way to remember those words, those practices that will get us through these times. Earlier today, I had the most incredible opportunity and conversation with two people that I truly admire and am inspired by every single day of my life. Valerie Carr and Anasa Troutman are two of our world's greatest artists, writers, producers, entrepreneurs. And before really jumping into the conversation, I really wanted to share with you this book, See No Stranger. It's a book, we say it's Valerie's third child, that was released Tuesday into the universe. And I wanted to read a passage from the book that really contextualizes not just the book, but what so many of us are trying to fight and embody and create in this new world. How do we labor for the world we want when the labor feels endless? Valerie declares revolutionary love as the call of our time, a radical, joyful practice that extends in three directions. It looks at others, our opponents, and ourselves. It enjoins us to see no stranger, but instead look at others and say, you are part of me. You are a part of me that I do not know yet. You are a part of me that I do not know yet. There are no strangers. There's just humanity in this time of deconstructing white imperialism, white supremacy. It's remembering that radical love, radical justice is the path forward.
justice. So I'm so excited to be here and very excited for this next conversation. I want to introduce our next two guests. Valerie Carr, who's founder of the Revolutionary Love Project, whose new book, See No Strangers, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, came out on Tuesday. And also Troutman, an incredible writer, producer, entrepreneur, founder of The Big We. I'm so happy that you guys are here. And thank you for coming on board to the National Day of Healing.
It's so good to be Mike and Anasa.
Yes, we'll always say yes to you, Mike. Always, always, always.
Nah. So let me just set a context and then just jump into the first question. So we're living in profound times. There's rebellions and uprisings and revolutions underway all around us. And something that I really admire and am inspired by with both of you is you always centered love as a foundation setting for social justice. And I wanted to just jump in and ask you all during this time, how are you first off? And then like what tools or techniques are you using to just be safe and healthy and well during this time?
Anasa.
I'm amazing. I'm so good. I have not felt this energized and hopeful and excited in a really long time. And all like acknowledgement and respect for the difficulty of the moment, the suffering of the moment, the sadness and anger of the moment, and a portal has opened. The portal is open. It's open. Mm-hmm. And I am so much more present to the possibility of that open portal than I am to anything else. And I'm the other side of that is I'm exhausted because portal moments require us to show up in ways that are beyond what we normally do. So I'm, even since the beginning of the shelter in place order, there was a quickening of my work even back then, but now that we're in the middle of, this uprising prompted by the murder of George Floyd, I am like literally 12-hour days every day, every day. And so I will admit that I am not practicing personal sustainability. I am not doing that. I am really excited about my last meeting tonight because I'm going to bed and I'm not going to talk to anybody tonight, tomorrow, and maybe not even Sunday. So I'm trying to do my best to, make sure I eat because I keep forgetting, make sure I stay hydrated at least. And I've been doing a lot of praying. I've been like meditating every morning, no matter what, because I know what the day is going to be like, and trying to get centered no matter what, because I know what the day is going to bring. But I am being sustained by what I'm seeing around me. I'm activated by what I'm seeing around me. And it makes me so proud and so hopeful that we're in this moment that we're in. It's like the moment I've been waiting for my whole life.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Anasa, my sister, I share so much of that. I actually have like a gigantic pink water bottle to remind myself to drink water because it has been so relentless and so exhausting. I feel like we've lived lifetimes in the last few weeks, let alone the last few months. And we're not even like, we're barely halfway through 2020. I have cycled through so many emotions, like intense grief, intense rage, like my wrists are like burning with rage, and then intense fatigue. And then for a moment there, fear, as like my neighborhood in Los Angeles was just militarized for a second there with National Guard in the street, guns out. And it was just, and I remember, and it's all those emotions, sometimes just in the course of an hour, right? So it's been so much. And I remember the first time we actually ventured out with my kids in the car. And I was so nervous about my son seeing the rifles in front of his preschool and in front of the cafes where I wrote so much of this book. I mean, our neighborhood was just transformed for about a week. And I didn't know how I was going to explain the guns in the street. And I looked at his face and he had this like look of astonishment. And I followed his eye line and he wasn't looking at the guns. He was looking at all this new graffiti that had appeared in our neighborhood. It's like George Floyd and Trayvon and Breonna, and then BLMs with like hearts everywhere. And he turns to me, he's like, "Mommy, did you do this?" I said, "No, Gubby," because all he hears me talk about is love and justice in this household, right? So I was like, "No, Gubby, we did this." There are actually millions of people right now who are rising up, flooding the streets, embodying the kind of revolutionary love that he hears his mommy talk about all the time, like all around us in a way, right, Anasa, that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. So it is a profound moment. And to be brave enough to like experience all of these emotions, because the grief then comes, like 120,000 people now have died from this virus, people in our own lives, in our own communities, disproportionately people of color, disproportionately Black people. I still have George Floyd's voice echoing in my ear, and I'm trying to understand what happened to Rayshard Brooks. I mean, there are 2 Black men who were found hanging dead here in Los Angeles, and we're still trying. It is so relentless, it is so breathless, that I find that I am the safest when I'm in the present moment. And so those practices right now of just dropping in my body and being alive to where those sensations live in my body and breathing through it. I think about the wisdom of the midwife. This is a long labor for justice. It's not be this flash in the street. When people are like, they're holding the signs, white people, non-Black people of color, like never before, holding the signs, marching. And I'm like, well, what happens when we go back into our homes and into our families, into our schools, into our workplaces, into our industries? There's no institution in this country that doesn't need us right now to stay in the labor of transitioning into an anti-racist society. So this is a long labor. This is generational work. And so the wisdom of the midwife is coming to me, like, you got to breathe and then push and then breathe again. She doesn't say breathe once and push the rest of the way, right? It's breathe, push, and breathe again. So I'm finding ways to breathe every day. And Anasa, me too. I am hiding away my devices tonight. My husband and son are actually going to hide them in the house, so I can't find them for the entire weekend, so I can breathe, so I can push again on Monday.
Amen.
It's a great tactic. I'm gonna have to use that. Anasa, well, there's a couple things that were mentioned, right? The power of art, the symbolism, the messages, the beauty of the graffiti that you talked about. In this moment of sustainability, in knowing that as artists, as truth tellers, we have the ability, and I would say the responsibility, to create new worlds, to force our imagination to dream of things that we can manifest. What role is art playing right now? Not just as a healing, but in terms of world building, if you will.
I think art in this moment is playing the role that it's always played. It's funny because the people who I am depending on the most, who I'm in conversation with the most, who I'm allowing to push me the most, are people who are creatives. Because without the creative mind, then where are we going, right? Without the creative mind, we're spending all of our time pushing back and dismantling, and none of our time reimagining and building a future for folks to step into. And so for me, like the work that we're doing in Memphis and across the South, when I'm looking for an institution to invest in and to help build land and build place for us, like I only want to do that with folks who have creativity access right there, like right at the surface. Like if you can't get to creative, you are not the person who I want building a world for me. Because what we have had over and over again is folks who have the opportunity and the impetus to build worlds, but who just recreate the destruction and the patriarchy and the white supremacy with a different face on it. And it's time for us to have something completely brand new, innovative, creative, like from a different set of values and a different set of experiences that we have not collectively had. And so for me, the most fundamentally, I believe that right now the role of the artist is to do this idea of world building and reimagining, because while we are dismantling, we must be also building for our people, so that we have somewhere to go when the time comes for us to jump through the portal that is open now. And then I think, as I think Valerie's son is proof of the power of art, of actual cultural product, because what it's doing is it's inspiring us, it's informing us, it's giving us instructions and directions, it's giving us comfort, and it's letting us know that we're not the only one. So when we go through, when we're walking through the street or we're on the social media and we're seeing these images of people, these images of words, these moving pictures, it shows us that the thing that we are imagining in our minds, there's actually a collective imagination that's been activated, that's being reflected all over the place. And that is how we continue to have, fuel to go. And finally, I think that there's a conversation about how our art is actually inspiring and dictating how we're showing up in action. Because as we know, as powerful as storytelling is, and as powerful as it has been for us to literally, this is so mind-blowing, we are watching in real time the narrative of the value of Black life shifting. In real time, it's been so mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. I know people are mad about Nickelodeon, like Nickelodeon is not going to do nothing, but Nickelodeon stopping their airing for 8 minutes and 46 seconds immensely contributed to the narrative of the value of Black life, right? Whether they'll do something next month or next year, I have no idea. We need to push them to do it. But in the moment, all the people, NASCAR, Lady Antebellum, changing their name to Lady A, all of that contributes to the shift in the narrative of why the suffering of Black people needs to be acknowledged and healed. And it's also dictating what happens next. So now all these grand gestures have been made, and now we can say, how does your grand gesture translate into actual policy change in the number of people on your board, in reparations, in relationship, in all those ways? And so I feel like artists are leading the way. I feel like narrative is leading the way. But I think that always, I'm always going to say that. There is no revolution without the artist. There is no revolution without the story. That's just, the history of the world. Like you can't debate that.
Anasa, I just want to love you so much right now, because every hair on my body when you were speaking, like turned up, and that's what they say when the ancestors are speaking, that your body tells you, and literally like that was truth. So thank you. I just want to acknowledge the brilliance.
For saying that. I actually used to do these calls in my other room, and I moved out here because my ancestors are behind me, and I always want to speak for them because that is my job on this earth. So thank you for that's a beautiful reflection. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Well,
can I read? Actually, I'm inspired to read this piece from my book.
Please. Book is the most important. Yes.
I feel like you are embodying this. This is from the chapter called Reimagine. The greatest social reformers in history, our wisest ancestors, did not only resist oppressors, they held up a vision of what the world ought to be. Nanak sang it, Muhammad led it, Jesus taught it, Buddha envisioned it, King dreamt it, Dorothy Day labored for it, Mandela lived it, Gandhi died for it, Grace Lee Boggs fought for it for 7 decades. They called for us not only to unseat bad actors, but to reimagine the institutions of power that ordered the world. Any social harm can be traced to institutions that produce it, authorize it, or otherwise profit from it. To undo the injustice, we have to imagine new institutions and step in to lead them. And that's, my sister, that is what you are doing.
That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. I've been talking a lot about the white imagination lately because I think that people feel like it's so much. How are we going to change all this stuff? And I'm like, this just all the way we live now just began in the imagination of some white man. Like, he wasn't an all powerful, all knowing, all whatever. It was just some dude who was like, you know what we could do? And some jackasses were like, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Like every sacred practice, every institutional practice, everything was literally imagined first in some person's mind. And we have that same power within us every single day. We can reimagine literally anything. Anything.
And what's exciting to me now is that I see white folks, white allies who are giving whiteness a new meaning. That for so long, whiteness has been synonymous with domination and that kind of imagination. But when I see like white people putting their bodies in front of Black people kneeling in the street in front of an army of police officers, I say, oh, I've never seen this in my lifetime before. We've never seen this in history before. We are seeing how white allies are not just becoming allies, they are becoming accomplices, conspiring with us to break these chains of oppression. That's what Indigenous leaders have called for a long time, accompliship.
That's right.
And if that means that they can center our imagination so that we're over here being victims. No, we're the ones who can lead us through this great transition in our country, in our world. And you can be by our side, helping us get there, centering, then I think that's what's giving me hope too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I have often been disturbed by the idea of allyship because it denotes that it's not yours. It's like I'm going to help you with this thing, but it's like actually you are suffering too, whether you acknowledge it or not. Your soul is suffering. Your mind and your heart is suffering because of the context that we're living in. And even if we listen to the 1619 podcast from last year, we realize that our entire economy is built on a slave economy and everybody is burnt out because of the expectation of work and the expectation of lack of rest and the expectation of low wage. It is not just people who are suffering from the ills of slavery. It is not. It's Indigenous people, it's white people, it's Latinx people, it's Arab people. We're all suffering. We're all suffering from this culture, and we all need it to be reimagined. And so the idea that we need help from someone to help liberate us is ludicrous to me. It's like, actually, we all need to be liberated. Yeah. We all need to be set free. We all need to be able to see ourselves as connected and divine beings that are responsible to and for each other, no matter what.
Well, with that being said, right? I know we just saw a beautiful child behind Valerie.
I know. I wanted to say hi, but I didn't know that would break. I don't want to break the fourth wall.
But we also know, Valerie, that you gave birth to your third child that came on Tuesday. And so I want you to share about that. Where can we go and find it, buy it, share it?
Yeah. So this is my third baby. No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. I want to put it into the hands of everyone who is rising up right now, everyone who is breathless right now, everyone who is trying to figure out how to reimagine right now. I wrote this book for my own survival. I started writing this after this president took power because I needed to figure out how I could last 7 decades. And I consolidated. I was given a gift that few women who are mothers and activists are given. I was given time off and a room of my own. And I took my family to the rainforest for a year and I poured through the stories of my life and the stories of the Sikh faith and the Sikh struggle and the stories of social movements in the past. And I began to see patterns emerge. And I began to call these patterns love, like revolutionary love. I felt like it's time to reclaim love as a force for justice for a new era, a new generation. It's the kind of love that we're seeing in the streets, the kind of love that means grieving and raging and fighting and breathing and pushing. And so I'm in conversation with my Black feminist heroes, Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks. I'm in conversation with James Baldwin and Bryan Stevenson and Michelle Alexander. And I'm also drawing forth from the wellspring of my own Sikh faith and my own Sikh traditions, which is a warrior tradition, to give love that revolutionary definition that I feel like it's always been. So my hope is that this is like my deepest offering from the deepest depths of my heart to yours. My hope is that I can put this in your hands and it might help you summon the bravery that you need to find your role and continue your role in this long labor for justice. So go to seenostranger.com. It's like, it's 72 hours old, this book in the world. So I would love to give it to you now at seenostranger.com. And we're hosting these virtual book clubs that will also be sort of like pockets of revolutionary love. Like it'll be more than a book club. We'll be reading together and learning together and rising up together.
I love that. We should do a club in Memphis. We're going to do a Revolutionary Love Club in Memphis. Yes.
Also, you embody revolutionary love.
He is revolutionary love. Well, I just want to say thank you both so much for joining us. I want to keep going, so I'm going to push this just a little bit. And I just want to give you guys space, just closing words. Any thoughts, on Juneteenth, on a day of liberation, on a day of revolutionary love?
Yeah.
What is your, multiple messages, but what message is speaking to you the most right now that we want to close with?
Wow. I think I love that we're doing this on Juneteenth. And I think I was actually in a conversation a little bit earlier about how I've been holding Juneteenth literally for my whole adult life. That for me, it's not only a day of celebration. It's a day to take the breath that Valerie was talking about, because I see that, I think about that moment when they showed up and said, wait a minute, no, this is over. You're free. And the feeling that must have been present when the realization started to come about, we're free. What does that even mean? And for me, Juneteenth is about relief, right? That feeling like when you're in a bind and when you get released from that bind and you're like, oh, just that first moment of relief. And then the moment of celebration, and then the moment of reflection of oh, our reality is different now, and who do we become in this new liberated space? And I just want us all to be mindful of that cycle, because it is a cycle that we're literally in every 10 minutes now. We're in a cycle of relief, celebration, reflection, relief, celebration, reflection, push a little harder, release, celebration, reflection. And I want for us to be able to honor all of that and hold all of that simultaneously, because it's what is required of us to be able to get to the other side whole. And I want more than anything, I want our wholeness, our joy, our abundance, our freedom. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, Manasa.
Thank you for having me. I love you so much. I'm so happy to be here with y'all.
Oh, yes. Valerie, you're going to take us home.
When I was a little girl, I had Dr. King's voice in my ear, right? The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And so I had in my mind just the straight line of progress. So there was slavery, and then there was segregation, and there was Jim Crow, but we have a system of mass incarceration that holds 2.3 million people behind bars, just as many people as were enslaved in 1850. And so, and now we're in 2020 and we're seeing images that feel like 1968 and feel like 1982. And so it's been very hard for me to grapple with what it is that we're doing as advocates when it feels like we're sliding backwards into darkness. And if we think of the story of America as one long labor, maybe Dr. King's arc just takes a different shape, right? If it's one long labor, then progress during birthing labor is cyclical. It's what you were saying, Anasa, it's cyclical, not linear. And every turn through the cycle, it feels like 1968. It feels like 1982. But every turn through the cycle is opening up a little bit more space for equality and liberty and solidarity and justice than there was before. And every turn through the cycle is getting us a little bit closer to what is wanting to be born, the nation that is wanting to be born.
Yes.
And when I hold that in my mind, here's the thing, I don't know how many more turns through the cycle it's going to take. I don't know if my son and my daughter are going to be rising up in another. I don't know if we'll see it in my lifetime or their lifetimes, but here's what I know, that I want to show up to do my part in the labor.
Yeah.
I want to be breathing and I want to be pushing in order to do my part. And if I have come to the belief, and Anasa, you embody this, that laboring in joy is the meaning of life.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And so this is my offering I wrote this book so that I could love and last. And my hope is that anyone who has this book in their hands, it's just one more source of wisdom to help you last in this long labor and to anchor it in joy, because we need you. We need each other. And we're all going to grow old together, the three of us. We're going to be like Grace Lee Boggs. We're going to grow old together. And we're going to be laughing like this in Asa.
Yes, we must live and be free. We must live and be free.
Well, thank you both so very much for who you are, who you embody, all your family, born, yet to be born, that have passed, everything. We really appreciate you so many. So love to both of you, and thank you, and be safe and well. And
Love you
talk
too.
later.
Love you too.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, that was good.
I love y'all.
Across the country, police are in the line of fire, facing the rage of protesters following the death of a black man at the hands of officers.
Scott, Jermaine, Reed, Philip, White, what you talking about? Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, what you showing now? What you talking about? Frank Gray, Ayanna Jones, Santa Grand, what you talking about? John Parker, Michael Brown, what you talking about? Harry Cabbage, Bonnie Singleton, Emmett Till, what you talking about? Zion Nancy, Jordan Baker, I'm a Diallo, what you talking about?
Alright, now let's get this shit started.
Breonna Taylor. Forced entry. Breonna Taylor. Guns up. Breonna Taylor. 8 bullets. Breonna Taylor.
Thou shalt not kill.
Out jogging. Ahmaud Arbery. Why they bother him? Ahmaud Arbery. Shot in his tracks. Ahmaud Arbery. Because he was black. George Floyd. It's why we kneel. George Floyd. Y'all kneeled and killed. George Floyd. His mother was crying. George Floyd. Now you started a riot. Say his name. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. George Floyd. Say his name. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. George Floyd. What you talking about?
If I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, if I pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, would you then do the same for me?
Man, woman, black, white, gay, straight, left, right. Feels like I have no voice, so why do I always hear myself? People don't even see me, so the efforts I put in help. If I walk in my truth, will I change all the non-believers' minds? Will they just call me a liar and talk about me from behind? You love me, I love you too. You pray for me, I pray for you. This vibration is spiritual. We bleed the same, don't fear for you. Couldn't stand for something or for nothing. Just keep on trusting and keep on loving. I don't fight for self and for my whole ring. We all pay the price just so we can feel free. Feel free, let freedom ring. Feel free, let freedom ring. Free like you can live how you wanna, love who you wanna, do all you wanna, be all you wanna. Man, woman, black, white, gay, straight, left, right.
This is a singing bowl. It is in the note of F. It is to activate healing of the heart. It is so important that we heal the heart, that we use art, that we use music, that we use sound to heal. It is really, really important that we know that we have to be responsible for creating the world that we want to live in, because we were born with the energy of love and a sound mind. Be ye also transformed by the renewing of your mind. Our young people in the previous video, well, first let me say the conversation with Mike De La Rocha and Anasa Troutman and Valerie was so transformative. It was so moving. It was so beautiful to just see the conversation weaved back and forth in the name of healing. And then to see the young people rising up, using art to express themselves. I would say that it's important we remember as we go about healing, as we go about marching and speaking out loud, know that the sound that you utter, the more intense the energy with the words, makes it manifest. So I encourage all of my young people listening to stop saying, I can't breathe. If you're going to say it loud, I want you to say, I am breathing. I can breathe. Because when you send up a signal in the universe with a lot of energy and velocity and frequency, it manifests. So don't get tricked. The trick is inflict pain and speak about the pain, and then you attract more pain. So the goal is to take the hurt, the anger, the rage, the frustration, and build it up and know that it is energy and you have the power to say something different. So even when you're hurting and you're not feeling good, if you just say, I am, because we know that in mathematics, anything that comes afterward is infinite. I am a woman. I am a man. I am whole. I am loving. I am breathing. I am here. I am the one who lightens the darkness. So when we come together in the thousands and we raise up a tone, we are drawing upon an energetic frequency. So let us use our movement. Let us be cognizant of our ancestral power. In the spirit of Juneteenth, in honoring our ancestors, let us be mindful of our ancestral wisdom. Whatever we speak, we will see. So it is really important that we harness this power and use our tones for healing. And to that end, our next segment, I'm so excited to introduce, because we had a special guest all the way from India. Her name is Preeta Ji. She is the founder of what was formerly One World Academy, and it is a philosophy and meditation school that she runs with her husband, and they have led millions to freedom of spirit, to the liberation from pain and emotional suffering. You know, one of the things that I learned, I had the pleasure of traveling to the school in India with Erica Ford, and one of the things they teach is that all emotional suffering comes from self-centric thinking. And I had to really process that, because think about it. When something happens and you feel that disturbance inside of you, what's really going on? It's because somehow you've made it about yourself, right? So even if someone says harsh words to you, you know, people are slewing a lot of language, you know, words have a lot of power. So even if someone says something negative to you, I can't believe they said that to me. Who are you talking? You talking to me, right? We make it about ourselves. We take someone else's pain and we make it about ourselves. So be mindful of not taking it on. This is your personal space. So protect your space. So the words that come out of someone else's mouth, you don't have to give them life and take them on and make it about you. Be mindful of what you put up in the universe. Be mindful of what you take into your cipher. So Preeta Ji is actually going to lead a conversation about healing with Erica Ford, who is the founder of Life Camp. It is one of the leading grassroots organizations in New York City that co-produces public safety and develops youth leaders, develops young people into leaders. Their focus is on stopping gun violence. Also in the conversation is Chico Tillman, a phenomenal brother who is a senior advisor at the Community Justice Action Fund. And also, I believe he just recently got his PhD, a very powerful young man who's also been teaching and leading in the cure violence space and helping other teams to really become versed in how to use community policing. We talk about defunding the police. So he is a teacher and an educator in teaching people how to mobilize in communities and take control of their communities in the name of peace. We also have Sasha Cotton, who's the director of the Minneapolis Department of, I don't know because it's on another piece of paper. So today is my turn. I want to share this because this is anybody that knows me knows I'm a Virgo. And I really care so much about, you know, doing the right thing, having all of my stuff together all of the time. And so I believe that there's an opportunity even in this moment for the universe to give me the freedom and the space to make a few mistakes and actually laugh at myself. And so if you've ever experienced that, I want you to allow yourself the opportunity to just be free and just to let go. And it actually makes us more human. So yeah, I make mistakes. Sasha Cotton is the director of the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention. And also in the conversation is Carolyn Dixon and Orisa Napper. Carolyn Dixon is the founder of Where Do We Go From Here, which is a nonprofit organization which helps parents heal from the trauma of losing their children to gun violence. And Orisa Napper Williams is the founder of Not Another Child, a similar platform where they work to help parents heal from the loss of their children. And so these two women took their pain, the pain of losing their children, and they transformed that pain into positive purpose. And now they have nonprofit organizations to help other women. So again, in the name of Juneteenth, it's really important that we examine ourselves and say, what is my gift? What is my contribution to the world? What is it that I can do that is unique to me that can serve my community? And so I celebrate those two sisters because I can't even imagine losing a child. And, you know, they say that parents should not be burying their children, but we see that more and more in our community. So in this conversation, Preeta G is talking about how to heal from trauma, how to heal in the midst of trauma, and how to find love and forgiveness in those spaces when we're hurting the most. Here's the conversation.
Though we have great laws which talks about equality and freedom and liberty, why is this happening again and again in the world is the question. So are laws not sufficient to bring us that equality? Do we need something more? It definitely is leaving us in a place where we have to think that we need much more than just laws to govern us. We need a transformation in our inner self. We need a transformation where we are able to move away from separation and actually come on one platform and realize that we are all one human beings. It is in terms of experience of life, we are one. This education has to happen at every level. It has to happen in families. It has to happen amidst children. It has to happen in organizations, that we are together. The way we experience life is just the same as human beings. That is our fears, our need for love, our anger, our joy, our celebration is just the same. Right now, the world is so very focused. I don't know, because of the way the civilization has evolved. It is so very focused on differences, how different we are from the other. And I wish that can go, that has to go, because that will go only with an evolution in consciousness, with spirituality gets tied up into everyday life. That is, you feel that you are more larger than you feel what you are right now. There is this tendency to constantly separate between mind and the not mind. And then you are threatened by the not mind, or you want to threaten the not mind. And that is the way everyone has evolved. And one that has to change if you want to really find peace in this world. What do you say, Erika?
I say that's difficult.
I believe it is also difficult. I believe it is difficult because on one side is being oppressed, on the other side is the one is oppressing. And there is a clear division between the one and the other. And the sad part is there is one section of the people who are wallowing in hate and anger. And as you are in hate and anger, we really can't find peace. Peace is such a strange thing if you can see it. If you're able to see that peace is either for all of us or it is for none of us. You can't say, I will be peaceful in my community alone, or I will be peaceful within my family or within my community or within my area. That kind of peace doesn't exist. And what is needed now is a peace consciousness, an evolution into the peace consciousness. And as you said, it is very painful. It is very painful. I'm not saying you just need to push things out and say that nothing has happened. I'm not saying that. Nor am I saying, build anger and fight for justice. Nor am I saying that. What I'm saying is healing has to happen. And it has to happen from within. It has to happen from the world. If everybody has to be healed. Let me share with you what I'm trying to explain. Like I have a daughter. She's 16 years old, and for the last three and a half years, she's been working with a tribal village near Ekam. And she's been working with the village. And initially, she just felt she was very connected to the children of the village. We have around 30 odd children. And she is like wanting to, do something for the children because she really was touched by them when she visited them. And then she found out the parents did not have a voice. They did not have a will. So she did not work on building an infrastructure or building a village first. What she worked on is building, making them joyful, helping them find their voice, helping them find their will. That's what she worked on. And today it is a very beautiful village. They are kind of, I don't know if you're aware, India has, just as America has the racial discrimination, India has discrimination in terms of caste. They're discriminated based upon different castes, and this tribal village that she's been working with has been one of the lower class caste system. They belong to the lower caste system, and it is important to heal from within for everyone. As you as leaders, what I expect from you is that you take this responsibility of healing hearts. That healing of the heart is actually going to take you a very long way. Let me tell you. If a person is in anger, if a person is in hate, and from that state of anger and that state of hate, if you're going to find peace, it is not going to happen. Because hate and anger and fear will only make you very reactive. You'll take out intelligence from what we are doing. What you need to do, everybody needs to do is perform intelligent actions right now, taking into consideration the whole. For that to happen, the healing of the heart is so very essential at this point of time. On one side is the healing of the heart, and the other side is the evolution of the heart to know that the other is not actually separate from you. The other has the family just the same as you. The other needs love as just the same as you. Their children need that kind of security and protection just the same as what your family needs. We are united together in terms of the way we experience life, and we should move away from the differences that separates us into focusing on that oneness of our human experience. That is, we are constantly divided. We are saying, you can say that I am different from you. I am from India. You're from the United States. My skin color is different. Your skin color is different. We can go on talking about our differences. Yes, each and every one is unique. Each and every one is great. But rather than focusing on the differences, on feeling oppressed, feeling anger and feeling hate, or rather than focusing on the differences and feeling superior or feeling prejudiced against the other, if we are able to move, if you are evolving in one's heart, this evolution has to happen across every race and every class and every religion. Erica, I feel.
How does, so for example, the world saw a man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds hold his knee on a man's neck and basically kill him in front of the world. And so how do you bring, and Sasha, that's her city, right? She works over, that's where she does her work in, right? And Ms. Dixon, while she had the coronavirus and she's in her house sick, and the police are outside harassing her son to the point where she has to come outside, and then they don't have no compassion or empathy for her being sick with the coronavirus, and they harass her at the same time. And so how does one, and in Chico, in Chicago, the Mexican community and the Black community are shooting at each other and fighting and so on and so forth. How do you bring to those individuals those two police officers and a whole, community of Blacks and Mexicans, the understanding that you need to look at this person and find peace, or all the things that you were saying in the middle of, I'm going to say, the battle, right? Because those people right there were trying to survive at that moment. Ms. Dixon was trying to get justice, get them off of her son at that present time. And so how, in the midst of, the attack on your neck and your space, and you not having access to even quality health care we could deal with this coronavirus, find space in your heart to look at people as, from a place of love or a place of compassion.
Erica, what we should understand is we are trying to solve a problem that has been with us, I would say, for 400 years. We're not trying to stem out something that has sprouted yesterday. So what I'm trying to tell you is it will need a lot of patience from leaders of every section of the society to hold this very clearly in one's heart. You're understanding, because the entire civilization is constantly feeding on our differences.
Yeah.
Where one community is kind of oppressing and suppressing another community, or one class is doing it, or one race is doing it, or one caste is doing it. It is happening again and again. It's not only in America, but it is happening across the globe. And what we are seeing in America is a 400-year-old disease. A disease in consciousness is what I see. And what I'm trying to tell you is, if we are going to fight this current situation by further instilling hate and anger, please, it's going to be a virus. We are so terrified of the COVID-19. We are so terrified of the coronavirus. And we are seeing it being so contagious, seeing it spread so quickly, and we are coming at it, trying to contain it. Yes, that has been the effort of every part of the world. But I see this anger and hate being something that will spread between families, from families to families, through several generations, and it will be alive, it will continue. That I don't want to happen. I would say, let us do a mass healing for the hearts. Let us heal. Let every individual, which, irrespective of what class or what race you belong to, begin to feel the other. Begin to feel what the other is experiencing. Let it become an evolution in consciousness. That is going to help the situation. Let me share with you another thing from the history of India that we have. See, we were under the British rule for quite a while, and until Mahatma Gandhi came and led a peace movement, a non-violence movement in India to get the British out. And at one point of time, there was violence that emerged, and Mahatma Gandhi, instead of allowing the movement to continue, Mahatma Gandhi stopped the movement. Mahatma Gandhi said, we know that we will have the freedom from the British. But if we are going to invoke anger and hate amidst people and get that freedom, we will be a country, we will be a nation that will be in hate and anger. Imagine 300, we are much more now. At that point, we were close to 300 odd million people. Imagine 300 million people wallowing in hate and anger. That will destroy us as a nation. And Mahatma Gandhi did not adopt that way of wanting to send away the British. It was the non-violence movement. If you instill anger and hate, please understand we are destroying our future generations, because that is going to continue to your children, to your grandchildren, it is going to continue. But at the same time, if you're able to heal hearts, if you're able to allow everyone to find a voice, I understand what you're saying. You're in the midst of though we have great laws which talks about equality and freedom and liberty, why is this happening again and again in the world is the question. So are laws not sufficient to bring us that equality? Do we need something more? It definitely is leaving us in a place where we have to think that we need much more than just laws to govern us. We need a transformation in our inner self. We need a transformation where we are able to move away from separation and actually come on one platform and realize that we are all one human beings. It is in terms of experience of life, we are one. This education has to happen at every level. It has to happen in families, it has to happen amidst children, it has to happen in organizations, that we are together. The way we experience life is just the same as human beings. That is, our fears, our need for love, our anger, our joy, our celebration is just the same. Right now, the world is so very focused. I don't know, because of the way the civilization has evolved. It is so very focused on differences, how different we are from the other. And I wish that can go, that has to go, because that will go only with an evolution in consciousness, with spirituality gets tied up into everyday life. That is, you feel that you are more larger than you feel what you are right now. There is this tendency to constantly separate between mine and the not mine. And then you are threatened by the not mine, or you want to threaten the not mine. And that is the way everyone has evolved, and one that has to change if you want to really find peace in this world. What do you say, Erika?
Life Camp Incorporated, also the Black and Brown GVP across the nation. And we have Sasha from Minneapolis. Sasha, you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sasha Cotton with the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention and the group violence intervention here, as well as the hospital-based intervention work falls under our office. And obviously we are still reeling and redeveloping after the death of our brother, George Floyd. And so, yeah, we're on the ground doing the work, trying to bridge the gap and serve the people.
Yes.
And my name is Kepper Kears. I'm the Director of Wellness and Therapeutic Services at Life Camp. So I work with Erica Ford, and my role is to provide unconventional therapeutic wellness services to families impacted by violence.
And I am Neko Bumake. I'm currently a power forward for Los Angeles Sparks, entering my 9th season. And I'm also the president of the WNBPA, the oldest and only professional women's association union that has been historically impactful in union work for professional athletes and for women specifically. So that's my role.
Dope. Dope. So
Erica, start just doing a sound check with you because you were the one that noticed my sound and visual. Am I good today?
So you're frozen right now. So I would not move as.
Okay, should I use my cell phone and turn it landscape? No, okay.
Am
I
can't answer that question. I don't know, the Wi-Fi in your establishment.
I was saying the Wi-Fi, the phone is what I use, the landscape phone, then the visual wasn't bad.
Correct.
Should I do that in the laptop? Or are we good right now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
All right. Should have had Mike here too. So let's go. Kepper, you want to lead the conversation as the host for tomorrow?
You are full of blessings and opportunities, which some might call surprises. Yes. So, because I am not versed in sports, say it again.
For the court, you got to be coming with the surprises. You got to be ready for the layup, or jump shot. You can't just come like it ain't gonna be ordinary. And we on a court right now in the world. We on the world's court. The people in the field and the ball is going to the man. And so we here today to just expand on that conversation about in that. In various ones of our fields, we're often under pressure, and how do we find space to heal? We're celebrating Day of Healing today. We're celebrating Juneteenth, the liberation of our people. And so as we continue to take the ball up court, and I'm gonna use that as a thing, how do we hold on to the ball? How do we pass the ball and make sure that the people that we're passing the ball to, that they are ready to catch the ball, open for the shot, and we win the game. And the game that we trying to win is like we're trying to get justice. We're trying to take our people to a space where we can truly see the power within our own selves. And as women, we are always in the forefront of various different struggles and movements and callings. And so, just how do we do those things? Anybody?
Well, thank you, Erica. Ball received and accepted. I'm going to start with a slow dribble. I might foul out, so don't you hold it against me as I've got a pro athlete on the team. But I think the first thing that we can talk about just from our respective spaces, and I'd actually love to start with, I'd like to start with Sasha, because then I want to pivot to Neka, just in terms of women's roles in activism, and Just based on what you've experienced, Sasha, in Minneapolis, I'd love to start with you in terms of how important it is for women to take a leadership role in this activism space, and what are some of the challenges or victories that you've experienced just as a Black woman in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's ironic that you raised that question, because as I'm sitting here and the meeting that I stepped away from is 15 of my guys who are all, I have one female who's here with me, but really leading in a very male-dominated industry, I think nationally, but certainly in the Twin Cities, public safety and violence prevention is a very male-dominated world. And so, and activism, you know, to a certain degree as well, has a lot of male faces. And being at the intersection of female identity and a Black woman, but also a woman who self-identifies as Latina, it's a loaded question, right? And so I think we have historically always been in the movement of moving our people forward on every important issue, but oftentimes our leadership has not been lifted up in the light the way that it deserves to be. And I think that we are treading in new territory as we see more female leadership and more opportunities for us to not only lead, but to lean into that leadership and really own it outright. I think that I have earned the respect of my team and my peers to hold a seat at the table, but that's always up for negotiation. And so I think it's important as a leader to lead, but also to know what it means to lead from behind. You know, there are things that the guys that work with me can do that I don't have the skill set for. And so leadership doesn't always look like being out front. And I think women often can be better skilled at that, at being able to build the people around them in a way that is really meaningful and allows everybody to shine while we still maintain our crown.
Well said. And I think that's a great actually segue to NECA, you know, as someone who is a star player in the women's NBA. I'd love to hear how your experience parallels to that as a Black woman, you know, in the sports world, you know, how female athletes have had some of the challenges that NECA has had, and also have you all taken on a role in activism in this space?
You know, one thing that I've realized, not just as my career has kind of ensued, but also just me, you know, evolving as a woman, is that we are born into activism. We're born into advocacy simply by being women. And then, of course, you tag on everyone else's special differences. You know, we're Black women. For me, I'm second generation Nigerian American. You know, I'm a woman that plays sports. And so it's almost as though the list goes on in terms of the intersectionality of activism and advocacy that we kind of, we live, you know, there's really no escaping it. And so I've realized, especially being a WNBA player in the, you know, the most successful women's league in the United States, we've certainly understood that we are in a lot of ways setting an example for other women in different sports. But also inherently, we are political. We're women playing sports. And then on top of that, we're an 80% Black league. And we navigate and we occupy so many different spaces, whether it's LGBTQ, you know, whether it's working moms. There's just so much about us that we live on a day-to-day that that doesn't allow us to escape our activism. And I would have to say too, because we are a professional women's sports league that's so successful and the longest standing in the U.S., many of our women have college degrees, and with that brings a whole new spectrum of advocacy and activism simply through educational experiences and exposure that we all have now being in professional sports, and it's quite a blessing to be a part of it. Obviously. No matter where we go, you can't say that it's easier or any easier than in any other space. But we hold that role proudly because it's who we are, you know, and I think that's something that we make known time and time again when we are in the forefront of, you know, speaking out as athletes with voices that do more than just play sports.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And as I look at Erica, you're a little chopped off, Erica. We want to see the magnificence of your crown. Yes. And so Erica, who is an avid sports fan, and NECA, don't hold this against her, but she's like a diehard Knicks fan. And, you know, you've got to be a really loyal person to be a diehard Knicks fan. Disrespect, like to just be out there all the time through the whole season, like really hoping that they're going to make it this time. That's just a little jab. But Erica's an avid sports fan and has been an activist for more than 30 years of her life. So, you know, just based on what NECA was saying, I think this is a great pivot to Erica Ford, who's been an activist for more than 30 years and a diehard Knicks fan. So, you know, she's a very loyal human being. But when we think about what Sasha initially started with in terms of women playing such a powerful role in the activism space, and, you know, Sasha being on the ground in Minneapolis with gun violence prevention, and then we have NECA, you know, who's a star WNBA player who, you know, I love that she stated that as women, we are born as activists, you know, just based on our role and the role that she plays even as an influencer in sports. And then I feel like you are the cross-section of the two of them. And so I'm sure you see yourself in these two powerful women because you're very much into sports and using your voice in the space of influence, and you're also on the ground. So tell me, you know, just as someone who's had such vast experience, where do you see the role of Black women in particular in this movement than ever before? And where do you think there's an opportunity for us in this space?
I think that we are leading it. Our voice is leading the conversation. Our voice is leading the whole development of the strategies and tactics on, okay. So I think that Black women are the leaders of the conversation. I think that we're the leaders in developing the tactics and the strategies to help move our movement forward, to help, you know, at the same time, nurture and develop our children on how they see the movement, how they show up, how they get protected from the trauma of the movement, serving as the healers and the wellness people for our children as well, and our whole family, you know. And so we play a lot of roles. And in playing a lot of roles, we develop the ability to really be successful and to really lead from a very high point. I think that when we look at what is happening with the killings, it is a lot of our children that are being killed, right? And on both sides. We are on the front line of violence prevention and public safety. And when we look at that, we are the ones who have to protect our children. We have to, you know, live without our children once they're impacted, and we have to move on, quote unquote, and help to maintain the rest of the family. And that is what I see now. I see a lot of people in the streets who have reached a boiling point, right? Because they've done so much for so long with nothing. And when we say we can't breathe, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on your child. But most of the time we don't put our oxygen mask on. I stood here in the kitchen this morning and I was like, I need a chef. I don't have time to eat. I had to throw out so much food today, just and that's like felt so bad throwing out the food. And sometimes we feel bad in saying we need a chef, right? And so we don't take care of ourselves most of the time. So we are the ones who foul out. You know, we are the ones who get sick. We are the ones who have to bounce back while we're sick and still take the team to victory, you know? And and we the loyal, you know, when you talk about dedication to the Knicks, that's an example, but we are the loyal ones. We are loyal to our community. We loyal to our churches. We loyal to the block associations. We loyal to the police meetings. We loyal to the system being able to help our children. We loyal to the school systems. We're loyal to so much, and so much has failed us. And so, you know, in the midst of all of that, we still take the ball up the court and win the game, you know, because we are determined to be free. We are determined to be the queens. Like, you know, she has a shirt on that says, phenomenal women. I have a shirt on that says Women Rise, you know, and that's just who we are, right? That's who we are. We are queens. We are princesses. And as she said, we were born into the struggle. We were born into greatness. We were born into leading and being limitless and not having a limited vision on what we can accomplish and what our children can accomplish. And so that's just how I see it.
Yeah, thank you, So I Erica. have And to actually, pause. Wait, I have
Yes.
to pause because Erica was talking about shirts, and you guys can't see this, but the shirt that I'm wearing actually has Phoenix on it, like the rising Phoenix.
Oh,
Because
okay.
that is like my little thing that, like, yet we rise, you know. And so it's a trademark that I have. I look for it.
That's
clothing.
beautiful. And so just to be in the shirt game, my shirt was actually made by an African woman, and her son is running for office in Queens, and she handmade 30 of these for our team. And so I'm proud to wear this today. Beautiful. And the fabric is beautiful. So I wanted to go back to what Erica was saying about the trauma and the wellness, and how, you know, Black women, we're taught to kind of just take on so much to depletion. And I was just having this conversation the other day, and quickly, NECA, I noticed that in the WNBA, they have something called Fit Month, where they focus on wellness, and that some of the tenets of your organization are nutrition and sleep. Tell me some more about how you all incorporate wellness into the WNBA's practices, and is that mandatory or is it optional?
Well, you know, I feel as though we're kind of just newly entering a space that is considering wellness as a whole. You know, as an athlete, everyone always assumes, oh, what do you eat? Can you drink? You know, stay up? You know, everything that has to do with the traditional, I guess, ideas of what's being physically fit and high performing is. But most recently, we've had several conversations. We've had several players speak up about mental health wellness, sorry. And it's, you know, it's not something people think about. People think that, oh, if your body's ready, that means your mind is good. And a lot of times as athletes alone, you know, you fight through so much mentally to get even your body to do what you want it to do. But then also, we're human. You're living lives. Things are happening that aren't pertaining to basketball. And you have to fight through all of that to still do your job. And I think as women, that in and of itself is an entire separate category when it comes to wellness, because, you know, as Erica was saying, you know, we're built for this, of course, but I feel as though a lot of people lean on that to kind of discount a lot of what we experience. And especially as Black women, I was just talking, I have 3 sisters, so I was just talking with my sisters about, you know, just feeling so overly sensitized, you know, to what we already knew what was going on with the killing of George Floyd, and being at home and in a time where all we are is connected. You know, we are online, and it's all about how you're feeling has a lot to do with like what you're looking at, what you're listening to, what you're eating, what you're touching. And a lot of people don't realize that. And as Black women, we endure so much, and we're not complainers. And so it almost feels as though, you know, what most people can't endure, whether it's physically or mentally, is now kind of pushed onto us as being a characteristic of what we are, instead of understanding that there should be a level playing field for everyone. And just because we're born into a world that expects us to be stronger because we're literally at the bottom of the barrel does not necessarily mean that is characteristic of Black women in general. You know, we've learned to endure a lot, but that doesn't make it right. And so I think that is a big reason as well why we have players that are speaking up about physical wellness, but also mental wellness, because it's very important for us to be able to perform at a high level on all cylinders. And as athletes, that is often overlooked because people just see us playing on the court, and they don't think about, you know, the feats that we have to endure, whether it's physically or even outside of basketball, for us to be the athletes that we are, especially as female athletes.
Well said. I mean, you touched on so many points there in terms of mental and physical health, and also that expectation and stigma. You know, that also comes from slavery. You know, as we talk about Juneteenth and emancipation, you know, what the slave traders would do, or white supremacists would do, is they would label us as
a certain level of strong so that when they inflicted so much pain, they just assumed that we could take it. It was almost a way of allowing them not to feel any emotion around lynchings or beatings or, just killings on so many levels. And so I really appreciate that you as an athlete just present a human side, because people often look at Black women as being so super powerful that we don't have any needs and no one checks for us, but everyone comes to us, and checks in with us. So I really appreciate that you said that. And I actually want to pivot to Sasha, because I would like to know, as Nneka talked about being in what was a male-dominated organization, the NBA, as a female player, you in Minneapolis on the ground as an activist who's fighting gun violence, Sasha, you are in, at the moment, what is also a male-dominated field. And so how do you find spaces for self-care when you're in the midst of trauma? You're on the ground, in the midst of violent situations. How do you navigate taking care of yourself in those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it's no easy feat, right? We know that many of the people who are both perpetrating and experiencing the violence are young men and boys, but also for that reason, we have a lot of men in the work. And often the plight of women who are experiencing the violence and women who are perpetrating the violence and those of us on the ground get overlooked. And so trying to find ways to do self-care can be really challenging when you're trying so hard to take care of others. And so for me, it has really been about building networks with other women of color, other Black women, so that we can do those check-ins and have those regular opportunities to talk about the challenges, but also finding ways periodically, and it certainly hasn't been easy lately, but having those opportunities to take a step back and really say, like, I just need a couple hours, I've got to unplug for a few minutes. It sounds small, but I'm an avid believer of pedicures. As soon as the nail shops were open, I try to support Black, pedicure technicians, but, finding those moments, because it's not going to always be a whole day or a whole weekend or a whole week, but finding those hours where we can really connect with ourselves and commune with what makes us feel good, I think is really important. But the other thing I think for me is being rooted in the fact that this is my life's work. So it's not just a job, but it really is a calling. And don't get me wrong, I have moments where I'm like, I don't need this. I could go work at Target. I don't need this stress. But even if I stepped away from it professionally, my heart would still always be there. And so finding ways to stay centered in the fact that this is a God-given calling and not just a job is also really important to my centering.
Yeah. I appreciate that you recognize that sometimes you don't have days, you just need a couple of hours. Sometimes you don't even have a couple of hours, you just need a minute. And just feeling, as Rudyard Kipling, there's a poem called If, where he said, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, like when we take a minute, take a full 60 seconds. Take a real minute. Don't take a minute for ourselves and then be on the phone doing something else, because we often do that as well. We take time for ourselves, but that time, is in serving others, and building that network of women is important as well. So I appreciate that you offered that. And do you find counsel in some of the brothers? Like, do you see where they're supporting, or if there was something that you could get from the men on the front lines, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have great guys that are on a regular basis checking on me, because they recognize that being in a leadership role and really filling the gap between our communities and law enforcement and government and systems can be a really heavy burden. And so I'm very fortunate to have men on the ground like Ferone Brown and Jamil Jackson and Wes Berry, who are always checking on me and are super protective. And so I feel like we're very fortunate that we have Black men on the ground who do see their role as being a protector, sometimes too much. Sometimes they're like, you need to leave. Yes. With that being said, I'm very fortunate. I have a great team.
Beautiful. And so, Erica, I love how that resonated with you. So talk to me about what came up for you in that moment.
So, like, for example, yesterday there was a shooting out here, and with the shooting, I got a call, like, we need you here, Erica, come to the shooting, and so I knew that I had to call my brothers in the organization who are my leadership and say, well, I just got a call that there was a shooting and they want me to come there, and they were like, what are they calling you for? What are they calling you for? You don't need to be there. Tell them you can't come. I was like, well, let me just give you their number and you call them, like, you know. But I know that they're always like, you know, very protective of the sisters in the organization, and very protective of just making sure that we are okay, you know, and that is a true blessing. And when we talk about the Day of Healing, we have to also look at our men who are under extreme pressure. Of a lot of times they say to us, you know, we can't do, like when I talked before about Black women being the forefront, it is because Black men's voice have been shot down, you know,
Yes.
both physically and everything else, right? And so they will be locked up, they will be beaten up, they will be, you know, killed because of the actions that they might take. A lot of them in the work that we do are connected to the system, are on parole or formerly incarcerated, and they would love to use those things to put them back in jail, to continue the business of incarcerating and punishing and killing Black men. And so we are very conscious of who they are, and just the pain and the struggle that they have to go to. And we know they never take a second to heal. They don't, you know, like we might go to a spa or pedicure or whatever, but they're not getting healing a lot as we are. And so we need to also look at how we provide space and opportunity for our men and our brothers to heal, and just teach them the whole importance of healing, of therapeutic services. We put in our program conventional and unconventional therapeutic services, because a lot of the high-risk individuals were not going to therapy. You know, it's a foreign language to us. We don't get no help. I don't need no help, you know. I'll just
I'm not sick.
Right, or take a sip, or, you know, go and do what. And that, and we know that in order to deal with the generational, of course, you're going to talk about that all day today, the generational and systemic trauma that they face as men, you have to go inside, and you have to go within and heal within your soul.
Yeah. Definitely we have to support our men. Definitely our men have to support our women. And also as women, we have to support one another. I think that the beautiful thing about this really unprecedented time is that it's bringing out for many of us good souls the best in us, you know, and even at times when we need to cry, it's bringing out vulnerable sides, and it's leveling the playing field. And so we have influencers and celebrities. I love how Dave Chappelle said, nobody wants to hear from a celebrity right now, from the perspective that real people with real voices. So even high level influencers and celebrities, or even like NECA, just coming with her real authentic self, that is so precious and so valuable and so meaningful. And by sharing your authentic self, you actually help people to recognize that you are a living, breathing human being. You're a girl, you're a woman, you know, you breathe, you bleed, you cry, and people need to know that and not objectify women and men and treat them like machines. You know, for you all doing the work in the streets, on the front lines, people look at you like machines. Erica, you get calls all day, all night, in the middle of the night because you show up. And when you show up, people just forget that you're not invincible. So I'd love to, just in this last round, just, you know, in terms of how we move forward, how we really help push this healing and make it really practical. And it can look like anything you want. You know, healing comes in many forms. It can come through economics. It can come through activism and leadership. It can come through healing. It can come through mentorship or just checking on someone. For each of you, I'd like to hear, you know, where does the responsibility lie? You know, or where do you feel, we know that everything begins and ends with self, but if there was some, just where do you feel that healing should take place, or what's the next steps? Whether it's your responsibility, whether it's the responsibility of corporations, but how do we move the ball forward, so to speak, in terms of transformation and going to the next level? And I'll start in reverse. I'll start back with you, Erica.
Good, because I was going to jump in first anyway.
That sounds right.
And the reason why is because it starts where you show up, right? And as a CEO of a company, right, it is my obligation, if I care about the people who come to work with me and to help carry out the vision and the mission of our company, to provide a space for them to heal, to provide a space for them to see the importance of digging in and being able to lift beyond the limitations that life has presented to them. Most of my employees are formerly incarcerated men and women. And so a lot of things they just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. People don't know how, just go sit over there and shut up. That's what grandma used to say, right? Go over there and go to bed. Go put something on your head. Go put some light, go do this. They had a whole bunch of go do, right? And so, or to just, and so we want to expand our experiences and teach and expose people to new things and ability to heal. So when we were in the middle of this coronavirus and we thought of doing this day of healing because of the coronavirus, before George Floyd even died, right? And was killed. And before Breonna Taylor was killed as well, we talked about doing the day of healing because so many people lost so many loved ones from coronavirus, or they were sick from the coronavirus and or locked up in the house and not knowing how to exist, losing their jobs and so on and so forth. And so I think that it is important for, as we do at Life Camp, we provided wellness kits. We provided tools, daily check-ins to help people see where they are and deal with where they are. And I think that wherever we go, there should be space for healing. There should be we step into the situation from a place of compassion. And so if I'm ordering a drink, the person behind the counter, right, should not come from what they see and what they want at that time, but be fully present as the person at the counter for the person in front of you, because you don't know what that person has experienced that day. And so however we can help someone, let's help people heal. Let's help people move past their pain. Let's help people see hope in their own ability to transform what's going on in their heart and their soul.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love what you talked about in terms of really being mindful right now that you have no idea what people are going through. So something as simple as a courtesy in a store or a restaurant as they open up is really, really critical. It's so true. Sasha, I wanna pivot to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, as a public health professional, so our work is housed in public health within the city of Minneapolis. I think the intersection of this epidemic of COVID and the unrest as a result of Mr. Floyd's life being taken has really centered healing for folks in Minneapolis, because while there has been unrest, there has also been deep healing that people have been seeking out and looking for. So like tomorrow, there's a series of yoga in the park for Juneteenth and opportunities like that. And so I think for me, working inside of an institution like a health department, I am really focused on what institutional responsibility we have to ensure that staff are well. And although most of the staff that work for us are contractors, so they don't have the health benefits and the things that they should have for the work that they do, we're in a policy dialogue right now as we think about how we transform public safety in our city. And so for me, the next steps really are action through policy. And how do we really begin to heal some of the wounds that have been created and never healed in our policy world as we re-envision what public safety can look like. And I think a lot of the conversation has been focused right now on reform, reforming the police department, making those changes. But I think the opportunity is very real to talk about some of these institutional ways that we are not supporting the work of healing that we know our people are doing for others, but that this institution is not doing on their behalf. And so for me, that's really where the healing comes from on an institutional level. And personally, I became a grandmother this year. And so I really focused, thank you, on generational healing and really making sure that as a person who was a young mom, that I am given an opportunity to, you know, reroute my son as a parent, you know, make sure that he gets all that he needs as a parent, but that also my grandson as a young Black man is really being fed and nurtured from day one in a way that is centering wellness.
That's beautiful. And I think people need to remember that we too are essential workers, and that's with all respect to our medical professionals, but a mother, a spouse, a sister, you know, we are all essential in each other's lives. And so when someone in the household, you know, is impacted, we're all impacted and affected. And I also encourage, as you're in the Department of Health and you're working in those institutions, I would love to see the reimagining of how we diagnose mental health and mental illness, because my concern is that our people have been medicated too quickly. We have young people that have been administered medication when they probably just needed a hug, when they probably just needed a good laxative, seriously. And they were just acting out because they had too much sugar and starch, and they were put on these medications at an early age. And so that is almost as similar as if you talk about the school to prison pipeline, well, the school to psychiatric, you know, medication pipeline is also very real. And that also impacts people's behavior. When I think about the Black man who was shot and killed in Walmart, and he had a bit of a mental imbalance. And so there was no checking in to see what was going on. And there was just the reaction. So I think that that's another thing that we just need to really reconsider, because like Erica said, grandma used to give us something and we go lay down and we were better, or she'd give us a spanking, but that straightened us up really quick, and we didn't have the level of drug culture, you know, in our community that we do today.
Well, Bessie, shut up before I give you something to cry for.
Right.
We've all heard that.
Right. That was probably the best medicine, you know.
I'm not that grandma though. I'm not going to be that grandma.
No, grandma. So, but what we do know, right, is that with each generation, we do different, right? And so that spanking looks very different today. That spanking looks like removing the video games, right? Or making sure that there's more healthy food, or spending time making the child do some reading or homework or something that is, you know, beneficial for them. Or like we did, Erica, with one of our young people who was remanded to us by the courts, we made him do yoga. You know, that was his discipline. And it was a discipline that actually caused him to heal himself. So we definitely know that our disciplines are relative to the generations that we're in. And Sasha, you just look so sweet. I can't imagine you be that grandma.
We're gonna kill him with kindness. We're not gonna.
This is true. We're gonna love him to life. So Nneka, we would love for you to have the last word and weigh in on your thoughts.
You know, I've gone through so many thoughts these past few months, I would have to say, and more so these past couple of weeks with what's been going on in our communities. And I realized that, you know, in our world, at some level, there's some level of privilege in everyone, you know, and I feel as though I feel it, especially being an athlete with a platform. And I think also being a part of a league that has always been so outspoken, it just reminded me of how as athletes, we are outward by nature, just because of what our jobs are. And when I think about, you know, healing, I really do believe that it looks different for different people, 100%. And in the same way that activism and advocacy does as well. You know, it's everyone kind of gets they put so much pressure on themselves to do what they see someone else is doing. And I think that having a platform like this is, you know, it's as important to understand that we must hold space for different people. And should I continue? Is it okay? Okay.
Yes, you can continue. Hold on a second.
Okay. We have to hold space for different people. And so I would have to say, to be honest, that as an athlete, you know, I have a level of privilege and responsibility to hold space for panels like this, you know, for me to be able to hold space for people that I don't know personally, or I haven't been exposed to, that are doing the work on the ground, you know, because as I said, we have different roles. And then I think also too, with the platform that we have as athletes, I think accountability is something that should be a priority for many athletes. Whether you like it or not, a great many of people see you when you're playing and when you're not playing. It's just the fact. You know, you don't grow up thinking you're going to be a role model, and quite frankly, you don't sign up for it either when you become an athlete, but inherently it comes with the job. You know, your life is exposed, what you do is exposed. And that platform that you had, it's, in my opinion, it's a waste if you don't do it, if you don't do anything more than just, you know, playing. And I feel as though I feel that strongly as well, because we're in the WNBA, a league in which we've time and time again spoken out about issues. At times we've had repercussions from our own league about speaking out about those types of issues. But that didn't deter us. And I think that we understand that the platform that we have, with it comes the service of accountability. And in that way, it starts, as you said, it starts with yourself. And once it starts with you, you know, you're able to use your platform to now hold other people accountable. Now, when we speak about healing, I really feel as though it's important for especially those in the Black community and marginalized communities to be very gentle with yourself, because you know, in some form or fashion, you're dealing with oppression in your daily life. It's not something that you can escape. Now, when it comes to the oppressor, I think that the accountability, there's no question about it. And I read a quote the other day that said, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. And I feel like that is so true, you know, like there has to be a degree of ignorance that is more comfortable for you than it is about learning about something that could expand your perspective and that can really change your action. And so I feel as though when it comes to those who are, you know, instilling these negatively perpetual things on different communities, the ignorance it's certainly a choice, and it's something that people like me who have a platform have to hold those people accountable to. Now, when we speak about the communities that are experiencing the oppression, I feel as though it's also my responsibility with a platform to hear those people out, to hold space for those individuals who don't have the same platform that I have, for us to truly understand what everyone is going through and creating what I like to call actionable convictions. You know, I think that especially when it comes to being in an oppressed group of people, oh man, your emotions can really get the best of you. And a lot of times it can cloud, your purpose. And it's not to say that what you're feeling is wrong, but I do feel as though we can change what we're feeling into actionable convictions. We can change that emotion into something that can be lasting, that can be sustainable. And it's such a delicate issue, and it's a web of intersectionality when it comes to people's roles and responsibilities and accountability. But I feel as though that healing comes in so many different ways for so many different people, as we are seeing it as it rolls out in our world today. But I know that it's my responsibility to use my platform to hold space for those who may not be heard as loudly as I am, but then also hold those accountable who seem to be the perpetuators of what we're dealing with in the world.
That's beautiful. Actionable conviction. I love that. I would like to use that with permission. Thank you very much. Can I ask you, do you feel like, I really love and respect how you talked about holding space for others and amplifying voices that may not be heard. Are you active, or the WNBA active at all in supporting folks on the grounds in Minneapolis and other cities who are part of this movement?
So we have several players that, whether it's their hometown or the market that they play in, there's a WNBA team in Minneapolis that are doing what they can with their individual platforms. But we can't hear you.
You can't say it that fast. There's not just a WNBA team in Minneapolis. You cannot do it that fast. And if we have time, I would run upstairs and get my jersey, because I'll be going over there just to go to the championship game with the best I think 2 years in a row they won.
They won 4 championships, but not in a row. It was like every other year.
Every other year.
But 2 were back to back, I believe.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Like 2 were back to back, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Maya Moore, who supports a lot of this great work across the nation, definitely supported us in partnership with Brand Jordan. And those sisters really do they stuff on the court. No, thing to LA. But,
no disrespect. We beat Minnie in 2016.
Okay, shade received.
But as we're celebrating WNBA players, also want to just give a shout out to Brittany Griner, because she actually came to South Jamaica, Queens. And she's also a staunch supporter. She's another one who lent her platform to amplify the voice of folks on the ground like Erica Ford and Life Camp, who are doing some really great work. So, I just love that you are about it, that you are, as much in the world as you are on the court. You really play full out, and your showmanship shows. But I'm so enamored by your vulnerability today, and by learning more about who you are in your soul. I think that's so much, not to say more important, but it's so needed at this time. And who's to say that the culture of everything will shift as a result of all of this? So is there anything else that you wanted to offer? Because I know Erica jumped in and had to talk smack.
Oh, I mean, I just wanted to say that, as we mentioned, we have players that are doing the individual work, and we continue to work as a league to amplify all 144 voices in the WNBA to truly represent what is bigger than us in the fight for social justice that we have historically, galvanized to show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we're able to do that, because the players as athletes now in this time, we've been given the front seat, the driving seat. And so we really do have a hand in how we're able to really foster change in more ways than just playing basketball. But in a lot of ways, I would like to actually kind of speak to, what you said about Dave Chappelle. I thought it was so interesting in his 846, I guess, sketch or skit. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, how he said, that while Philando Castile was happening, that also Kobe Bryant was playing his last game.
Yes.
And, people out here are saying, oh, stick to sports, or, what is sports going to do? And he said that Kobe was actually saving the world by playing, because people enduring that could take their minds away from it and look at another Black king that was out here uplifting the world, just doing what he does. And so that really spoke to me, because I feel as though as a member of the WNBA, we can both do that while also having actionable convictions while we're on the court, whether it's wearing certain shirts, dedicating seasons and games to certain people. That's kind of what I look forward to doing, and really making an impact in whatever way we can.
Well, we would certainly welcome that in Minneapolis.
Yes.
We haven't had an opportunity in the Office of Violence Prevention, but we appreciate all of what you're doing and hope that more conversations like that can happen here in Minneapolis, as we've been challenged by so many of the recent episodes, including Philando, who I went to high school with and know very well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you all are doing. It's always so wonderful to be in a space. I live in a world that can feel quite surreal, in a lot of ways. Everywhere I go, things are taken care of. Everywhere I go, I'm just seeing a court in a hotel. You're only seeing kind of the flashy parts of life. And so a lot of our women really take it seriously when we're able to be in our communities and really speak to people. And our goal is to engage. I don't feel as though this will be the last time that I speak to all three of you. I really feel as though that we connect for a reason to move forward together. And I just want to thank you all for including me, holding space for me in this conversation.
No, we love it. So what we hear is that you're going to come to Minneapolis and then South Jamaica, Queens. No, right. I mean, we love it. And what you said about being insulated and living kind of in insular life, it's true, you know, it really means something to connect and touch our people. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today, for our day of healing, for sharing your voices, for sharing your hearts, for sharing your vulnerability, and sharing your suggestions for how we move forward. This has been, I'm grateful to be in the company of such phenomenal women. May you be blessed today. I will continue to hold light and space for all of you. May you continue to shine and know that your path is laid with light. And we look forward to connecting again. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I just want to also close out with, as it is Juneteenth, you know, and that we understand to the brothers and sisters who are out there in the streets, that it's the resistance and the resiliency that's going to take us to freedom. That our ancestors smiled bright as we continue to stand and resist oppression, resist racism, resist discrimination, resist police brutality, resist miseducation, resist inequality, as we see so many different faces rise above. And so we salute all of the brothers and sisters on the front line right now in the streets, helping to raise the voices that give life to a lot of the changes that are happening in the world. And so we thank you, ladies, all. We thank you, Kepra, for doing a phenomenal job. And peace.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
So we're talking about healing. It was beautiful that we spoke to women to talk about healing, because they say when you heal a woman, you heal a nation. And so we would be remiss if we didn't give you a healing remedy that we know is tried and true, and it's aloe vera. This is an aloe vera leaf. Can you see that? Hold on, I'll put down my mic. And so the aloe vera leaf has 75 elements: vitamin A, vitamin C, potassium, magnesium. Aloe vera cleans the blood. Aloe vera cleans the digestive system. Aloe vera reduces blood sugar. Aloe vera reduces inflammation. And so let us not forget that we're also still dealing with the coronavirus. We're still battling this virus. There's talk of a second wave. And so the same way that we put on the mask on the outside, it's important that we put on an internal mask. In the videos following this aloe vera challenge that I'm about to share, you'll hear from Queen Afua, who has the Holistic Wellness Institute that I have actually studied at. And I learned a lot of these teachings from her, where she uses natural remedies to heal the body. And so I want you to consider taking the Eat Aloe Vera Challenge, because again, aloe vera will help to build your immune system and fortify you so that if there is a second wave of COVID, at least you're a little stronger. It's also important to remember that there's another video coming up with Dr. Joy DeGroy on post-traumatic slavery syndrome. And what happens is that, like I discussed with Latham Thomas, when babies are born in duress or in states of trauma, that trauma is also impressed upon the cells. And so in order to alleviate the trauma in the body, in order to alleviate the toxins in the blood from stress hormones, it's important that you clean the blood. In order to keep the immune system strong, it's important that you clean your digestive system. And aloe vera does both of those things. So here's the Eat Aloe Vera Challenge. You take an aloe vera leaf, you clean it. You can use apple cider vinegar or you can use lemon to clean the skin really well. Then you cut a small slice, and the goal is to eat it like it's a delicious piece of candy. That's why it's called the Eat Aloe Vera Challenge, because it's actually very bitter, but the bitters are what clean the blood and fortify the immune system. So I've asked my partner, Mike De La Rocha, to join me because I want to spread the wellness love. And so we are together going to eat this aloe vera like it's a delicious piece of candy, hence the challenge. So Mike, are you ready? I hope so. All right, so we're gonna hold up our aloe vera and we're eating the skin. Hold on a second. We're eating the skin because the skin is actually where a lot of the nutrients are. All right, so here we go on the count of 1, 2, 3. Don't I make that look delicious?
crunchy and juicy and tasty. And I know it's doing good things for my body. If you have elders that have diabetes, this is great to lower the blood sugar. If you're taking care of folks that have arthritis and inflammation, it will reduce inflammation. You hear me smacking on it. I encourage you to consider aloe vera. Remember, eating plants, eating food from the sun will give you life and keep your body healthy and strong. So here's to you. I encourage you to take advantage of an aloe vera leaf the next time you see one in the supermarket and enjoy the challenge. Next up, we have a word from Queen Afua. And then we have some teachings from Dr. Joy DeGroy on post-traumatic slavery syndrome, followed by a video from Black Lives Matter. Yum.
Greetings. I'm Queen Afua, and I am in support of National Day of Healing in Body, Mind, and Spirit. I stand with the Community Justice Action Fund and Life Camp, and all those who are fighting for our well-being and our wellness. The coronavirus has attacked the entire planet. Everyone is suffering. Families have passed away. Families are in fear. So we stand together in solidarity, June 19, 2020, to bring forth wellness and give solutions. There are solutions, holistic and natural, and we bring it together for our collective wellness.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on, and then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes, so 300 years of trauma, no help, freed, no help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impact. And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. So I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors. Well, what are they? Let's just say 2019, you have a black mother and a white mother. The sons go to school together. They find themselves at a meeting. The black mother leans over to the white mother and says, I just wanted to mention to you that I noticed that your son is really doing quite well. And the white mother's response is, oh, thank you. She begins to go on and on about he won the science fair, his uncle's an astronaut. She's just oozing. She realizes the black mother's son is actually excelling her son. And she says, well, wait a minute. Your son's the one that's really coming along. And the black mother responds, oh my God, he's a handful, but oh, he just works my nerves. Now, when I'm working with African American people, it doesn't matter what the audience is. It doesn't matter what class. If I were to ask, is she very proud while she's saying those denigrating things? And everybody laughs and goes, of course, there's a secret. Because everybody black knows that even though the black mother is going, oh my God, she's really proud. So now let's roll that scene back 300 years. And let's say this black mother is working in the fields and a white slave owner comes through and says, wow, that boy is really coming along. What is she gonna say? No, he's not. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work because I don't want you to sell him. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is called appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment. The little white boy, say Timmy, he feels really comfortable and happy about what his mom just said about him. And Trey looks at his mom and wonders, why can't you be proud of me? Because he doesn't understand the secret yet. And by the time he learns the secret, he will have already been injured by it. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. PTSD is a disorder that occurs as a result of a single trauma. You don't even have to be there to actually get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. You could just hear about something horrific happening to someone you love. So you have people who have experienced it firsthand, people who have witnessed it in their environment, right? People who are continuing to be oppressed. That exacerbates any possibility of healing. So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, because then it becomes part of what we call your socialization process. So you begin to normalize a way of living and being, everything from what we eat to what we believe it means to be a friend. You know, all of these things are colored by history. And if you don't understand it, you're going to fold in things that you've just assumed are normal. But post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, exaggerated startle response, outbursts of anger, feeling of foreshortened future. There was a point where there were, African-American children in different urban settings that didn't expect to live to be adults because they saw so much death, that they started planning their funerals like at 13, 12, as young as 10. When you start looking at the simple biology, you start looking at the impact of stress on health. And while we look at general stress, we know finances, you have illnesses, all these different things. How about being Black? How does factoring in being Black in America impact your stress level and therefore your body's ability to operate its own immune system? Because we know it compromises the immune system. Once you understand it, then you can deal with it. Because you see, it's habitual. You socialize. It becomes part of your being. So one of the ways you begin to address that multi-generational trauma is to work with the people it directly impacts, to hear from them. And when you give the people the information, they can use it. I think the first order of business is beginning to have a conversation. And the other is to educate the larger society. You have to stop the assault. So this is not purely a clinical thing. This requires social justice and change. That's where part of the healing is. It's not in a clinical setting or in a pill. It's in fairness and justice and safety and equity. We got to work with some of those clinical things, some of those issues of panic and anxiety. And we also have to deal with the fact that you have a system that is set up to oppress you and to continue to injure you. Both those things have to be dealt with. And they cannot singularly by themselves affect a change. They have to be done collectively.
Thank you so much. We're practicing social distancing. I hope you guys can hear. In closing, we wanted to just uplift and invite everybody to join the Movement for Black Lives, who's having a series of events this weekend in honor of Juneteenth. You can go to 619.com to sign up, to host, to participate. Also wanted to say this Sunday, the poet Jay Ivey, who opened our broadcast, is having a beautiful Dear Father concert centered on healing and wellness and forgiveness for those of us that have grown up without a father or in need of forgiving ourselves and forgiving our family members. I also didn't want to let the day go by without talking about one of the largest tribes in the United States, the Navajo Nation, has more COVID-19 deaths than 13 states combined. I'll say that again. The Navajo Nation, one of our greatest sovereign indigenous peoples of this country, has more COVID-19 deaths than 13 states combined. To address this, the Return to the Heart Foundation, led by Sarah Eagleheart, is having a live broadcast this Sunday. It's a fundraiser for the Native COVID-19 Action Relief Fund. Please join. Again, it's this Sunday. And there's a number of different other events going on, but I just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your spirit, for your energy, for your love. Thank you for the one and only Kepra for her amazing hosting and energy and everything else. And it's been an honor and privilege to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that cool mask, because you look like an action figure. This has been an honor to work with you. This has been a long time coming to have the opportunity to collaborate. So I'm really grateful that you lent your space at Revolve Impact. It's a beautiful space. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, as things open up, and even to go online, revolveimpact.org, activism.com and see how you can support this amazing organization. And also wanted to give a shout out as we talk about Juneteenth and economic empowerment and supporting Black business. This t-shirt that I'm wearing was actually featured on the cover of Billboard magazine. Two of the young ladies who are millennials in the music industry, they were the ones who created the blackout. And it went, nationwide. And so just wanting to celebrate these young leaders, the women who styled the women for the cover designed this t-shirt, and the sales of this t-shirt, the proceeds go to the families of the victims of gun violence who are on this shirt. And so I encourage you to go to 18LLC, that's ONEEIGHT LLC, and support young entrepreneurs who are using fashion as a form of activism. So shout out to Sensore Armani and Jay Bailey, because they created this look that I'm wearing today. And under normal circumstances, you'd call that a shameless plug, except if we are empowering our young people and Black businesses, we have to be shameless about supporting our own. To that end, I want to give a good word to all of the young people who have graduated this year. You made it. You did it. I salute you for finishing, especially when there was no school. You know how much discipline it takes, self-discipline, to get on the computer and do your schoolwork and complete? So you did that. You did that without the pomp and circumstance. So salute to you. You are our future. As Dave Chappelle said, I trust you. I trust you with my life. I know that I'm in good hands. And just wanted to tell everyone to stay healthy, take care of yourself, protect your immune system, and most of all, support your community and love on your family. They're the only ones you have. So thank you for joining us for the National Day of Healing. Thank you.